This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
No, cut that. Keep that. Someday it's going to be worth something.
Russ Wakelin.
You put me in an ATST with frickin' Wookiees attacking me and whatnot?
Now you're talking.
And Raef Hollywood Granger.
I still don't know what S-foils on an X-Wing are.
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to a special Bicentenial edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming at the speed of a 4-hour not too horrible podcast. Listen to it 2.5 times normal speed to make it reasonable. Dibs on Alvin. Today's edition is brought to you by all of our fine friends at Patreon, the people that help us do this show, that grand 1% that steps up and shoulders the load. Today, thanks to Dean Gilbert, Dean Scully, Dennis Eddy, Derek Stanley, and Donnie Williams, and a special thank you to all of you for bringing us to episode 200. I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host today. Our panelists are Russ, don't call me the big giant head Wakelin.
What?
And the one, the only, the O3C, Raef, call me Hollywood Granger. Let's begin. Issue number 1. The D6 generation has been pumping the ether with its not too horrible infusions now for nearly 9 years. That's almost 9 years of game reviews, roundtable discussions, mulling mechanics, hypertripe, interviews, contests, and more. That's Words from Wales, The Score, Total Fangirl, Did You Ever Notice, Hollywood Minute, What's in the News, and more. Sometime between the numbers of 1 and 200. That's not too horrible. Question: what was the exact date the first episode of the D6 generation dropped? Renewable Russ.
Oh, I have time to look it up. February 28th, 2008.
Redoubtable Raef.
October 26, 16 minus 9, 22.
Raef is not only bad with dates, he's bad with math, and Russ's memory failed him on the date. No, it is a tough one. Part 1 dropped on Thursday, February 21st, 2008. Part 2 dropped the next day on Friday, February 22nd, 2008. So if either of you had guessed either of those, I was going to not give it to you, so I was going to average them together and make it February 21st and a half. But I don't have to do that because you were both wrong. Issue number 2. From the very first episode, both parts, right up to the current era, Raef Hollywood Granger has been a part of the D6 generation. From the road trip where Craig was first convinced to try this crazy thing, through his surprise Call Me Hollywood ambush on the air, from the round table to the podcaster studio and beyond, Rafe's been with us in one form or another through the entire wild ride. Question: in what episode did Raef originally say his first fond goodbye to the D6 generation? Woebegone Wakelin.
I'm going to say 93.
Glum Granger.
That's it, yeah. Well, it's tricky. 93, but maybe I said it earlier.
Interestingly enough, I put down the date and I asked you what the episode was. I believe it was episode 93. The date would be, this is why it's weird, Wednesday, October 26th, 2011.
Wow.
Exactly 5 years ago from this exact moment.
Ooh,
Wow.
And that's weird.
that is weird.
And the weirdness,
weird.
it's emanating a weird wave that's just causing you both to be wrong anyway, because I wrote down the wrong thing. Issue number 3. One of the major changes in the D6 generation over the past 9 years has been the introduction of the third chairs, a rotating position that has included some of the top designers in the gaming world, publishers, specialists on countless topics, and even a world-renowned best-selling author. Stemming from a difficult time that could have easily ended the podcast in its relative infancy, the third chair has become a unique and telling strength. Question: who have been the 2 most prolific third chairs? Relatable Russ.
I'm going to say Ross Watson and Dan Yarrington.
Rig Diggity Raef.
Steve from Stronghold Games.
Oh, that's a good one.
And, shoot, it's not Ross. It's somebody else.
This wouldn't. I asked for 2 because I thought for sure you'd both get the number 1 correct. And that would be Raef.
Oh, that doesn't
With
count.
15 appearances
He's
in the
the
third chair, he
no.
blows everyone else away. But then again, he is the third chair emeritus after all. And
Shenanigans.
then, after
True.
Raef, by a single blonde Canadian hair, is Terrace Cassidy of Geek Nation.
Terrace!
Oh,
That's
yeah.
who I was thinking.
All right, there you go.
And then all those other guys are between 4 and 5. So there's a massive clump right behind Terrace. And if we had waited one more episode, it would have been a tie for second place. Issue number 4. The next major change with the D6 generation was the decision to reach out through Patreon to our listeners to support the show. Although there was no way to know whether such a new and untested avenue would provide the support the show clearly needed to continue, it has since proven a boon, allowing just over 1% of the listeners to support the, well, let's call it listening pleasure, for lack of a better term, of all the rest. Question: how many patrons does the D6 generation currently boast on Patreon.com? Rooter Russ.
I'm going to say 243.
Right hand Raef.
Without looking.
102.
Wrong! It's 224, which doesn't add up to any of the other numbers on the website, so I don't even know if that's right. But I'm going to go with it because it makes you both wrong. That's it for now for 200 episodes. Thanks for listening, and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by Lone Wolf Development. Take your game to the next level.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation, touring the world at geeknationtours.com.
And by Audible. Try the service, get a free book, and support the show. All by visiting audibletrial.com/D6G.
Hello, Russ Wakeland, and also with us is Craig Gallant. I can't believe it. 200 episodes. Go ahead, Russ.
Thank you, Raef. It is, in fact, episode 200 of the D6 Generation.
That is an obscene number when connected to anything that lasts roughly 4 hours long.
Exactly. And, of course, I am Russ Wakeland.
And I am Craig Gallant.
And I'm Raef Hollywood Granger.
Yes. Raef, welcome back into the third chair just in time for
I
200.
should drop the Hollywood after 200 episodes. And I'm Raef Granger.
No, you can't drop it. No.
Now that we finally just give it to you and put it in all of the material and put it all over Rapid Fire, now you're going to give it up?
No, you can't give it up. You've made it 200. You can't stop now.
Oh, it's true.
I think it took you 200 to establish it, actually, quite frankly.
Yes,
You should probably keep it.
You guys are finally just used to it.
Right, exactly.
I can't believe it, fella.
We have given in, and now you're going to quit.
So,
I cannot believe it.
You're stuck with
200.
it. Or 200.
It is 200. We have a very special episode today, kind of like Blossom. So, Craig, this is kind of your baby. So what are we going to be doing here in episode 200?
Well, Russ, Russ and I, about 2 months ago, started talking about what episode 200 was going to look like. And it was all Russ saying, dude, 200 is coming. We need to think of something. And I was like, I don't know. What do you want to do? And he was like, I don't know. What do you want to do? And one thing we said was, well, Raef needs to be there. And we were like, yes. And then another thing was, well, we want to get people involved. So we want to get listeners involved. We want to get the third chairs involved. And so that all fell apart and we didn't do anything. And then 2 days before the episode was going to be recorded,
yes,
I was like, Russ, what's going on? And he was like, I don't know. We're just going to wing it. There's the two of us. I was like, we're not going to wing it, just the two of us for episode 200.
Yep.
And so we sent out an emergency email.
Threw the 100-yard pass to Raef.
Yep, that's right.
I caught it, and I'm running for the touchdown.
That's right. I sent out an emergency email to the 55 people who were in the third chair. And they really stepped up. Those of 55 people who only had 2 days to get us something, 25 people sent us stuff, including the majority of them were audio clips.
Many
so
were audio, yeah.
We have a segment where Raef couldn't make it for that one night, so we have a segment where
appreciate the offer.
Would have been nice to have you. We have a segment where Russ and I are going to reminisce through the third chair evolution and reminisce about the different third chairs with many of the third chairs joining in. And keep in mind, they only had 2 days. And then we're going to have a segment where the three of us are going to walk down memory lane.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be navel gazing extraordinaire.
It will be. So Raef being on here is very appropriate. Because one of my fond memories of the show is how Raef would always try to inject these navel-gazing episodes into the series, and I was always opposed to them, and yet they always seem to be the most popular, which is kind of strange. And also, before we get into this, we should talk about the contest. So this episode is the culmination of the episode 200 contest, in which we also asked our listeners, with very little lead time, if they could please...
Well, they had over a month.
If they could please submit some of their favorite moments from the D6 generation, and we would talk about them as we reminisce down memory lane here. And you could either submit a written entry, or you could submit an audio entry. So we'll go through all of those. And one lucky winner is going to be randomly determined from that pool. And that individual will get to pick from the D6G prize tub, which includes lots of cool things from our friends at Stronghold Games and others. Great games to choose from there. So we'll jump into that when we get there. So, but first, we should, Craig and I, Raef, again, being the very busy, small business owner and lawyer.
Yes.
Couldn't unfortunately make it for one of our sessions here. So that meant that Craig and I were in Dunkin' Donuts by ourselves eating all the pumpkin.
It was I was eating no pumpkin.
Oh, the pumpkin is there.
It was a dark and empty bastion of donut goodness.
It was. And Craig, do you remember what we talked about while we were in Dunkin' Donuts?
Well, we haven't done it in a while, so we did a Where Are They Now, which stretched several episodes, almost half a year, I think. But way back, like in 2013, there were games we were reviewing, and whether or not we're playing them now, and what we think of them now, and what kind of place they have locally. Yeah, it's always fun to look back and see what's lasting and what hasn't. Because half those games we were like, "Whoa, this is gonna be it. This is gonna be the game I play till I die." And now you're like, "I don't remember that game."
I sold that on eBay.
Right, exactly. What I always find amazing too.
I have been in the middle of an eBay purge myself.
And when we do those, so I believe we got through episode, I don't know, do you remember what episode we got through, Craig? Trying to remember. I'll have to go take a look. Hang on a second. I can find out momentarily here. Whoops.
Oh, yeah, that's that. Now, this makes great radio.
It does.
What would the listeners listening to this, like, what can you whet our whistle? Is there a surprise? Like, you'd be surprised, we Russ with Descent or something.
No, well, we went from episode 1.
Level 7 was in there.
Level 7 was in there, which I still play a lot today.
Which he's playing right now.
So we covered from episodes 127 to 141 in this. And it sounds like that was not that long ago because we're only on episode 200 only. But that actually was, 2014? I think it works out to me, or 2013?
2013 into 14.
Right. So it actually, it goes by fast. And so we talked about a lot of games, and one of them was Level 7 Omega Protocol was in the list. We reviewed it way back then when it first came out. And that's one of the games that, I still have a lot of positive things to say about. I'm still playing it very regularly. I got a very dedicated group that meets every Tuesday. And so, it was great. And we go through all those games, which ones we still play, which ones are kind of like, it sounded good at the time, but 2 or 3 years later, not so much, or whatever. So you can hear all that goodness there. Yep. Craig, what's the best way to listen to Lost Chapters? Should one desire to do so?
Well,
on their iDevice.
That works.
Helps.
Yeah.
That was a plug for iTunes.
Don't do it on any of those that blow up and blow your brain, because you don't want that.
Don't get
no Samsungs.
Right.
You go to Patreon and become a patron of the show. For $2 an episode, we'll unlock the vasty vaults of the Lost Chapters, and you can listen to all of them to your heart's content over and over and over again if you would like.
Exactly right. So thank you for that. Ooh, Craig, what's the time now for?
I don't know. I'm out of reach. Achievements in 200 episodos of gaming.
All right, here's a little trip down memory lane. Does anybody know what we're parodying there? How many people you think Craig know? What percent? 10%? 20%? 30%? We're making a parody with that.
Craig doesn't even know.
I don't even know. I'm
Russ.
so good, I don't even know.
There's two references going on in Achievements of Gaming. And actually, this is an interesting reminiscing
Actually, you're
point.
right. There are two.
There are two, and one of them has been flagged as an annoyance that they would wish us to stop. Some percentage of listeners.
No, that's right.
And the other is Craig saying Achievements in Gaming with the echo effect, which I think, which always reminded me, I don't know if Craig ever intended this, it always reminded me of Pigs in Space.
Exactly, the Muppets.
From the Muppets.
Yes.
Yes.
That was
and because Miss Piggy used to go, Pigs in Space.
Yeah, I think it was just Announcer Man. But yes. And then
Announcer Man did it?
Now
okay.
the other noise that people find confusing is this noise, which is now non-functional. But anyway, let me try that again. There it is. That noise, that of course
We've been hacked by the anti-Chivo.
Yeah, that's right. That of course is the Xbox achievement noise, which I think at this point is a little more well-known than maybe it might have been in 2008, although I'm not sure. Because I used to get a lot of complaints like there's this funny noise in your podcast, and it shows up, and it's really annoying, and can you please somehow figure out what it is and stop it? And I used to say,
meanwhile, Russ is like desperately trying to hit the button at exactly the right time.
I love that thing. So so now
I remember those emails in the early days. People would. I have a lot of early memories on emails, which we can get to. But that was one of them. They'd be like, "I really like the show, and I really like how you list your games, but there's that annoying noise that just keeps popping up, and it's not on my end."
Right. So we'll talk more about that as we reminisce further. So, of course, Achievements in Gaming is brought to you, as always, by our fine friends over at Patreon. Again, you guys and gals over there are the reason we're still going strong at episode 200. You make it so much more easier to do this and to have to cover the costs of operating the D6 generation, as well as give us the revenue we need to go on little adventures like Gen Con and other things. So thank you so much, because dealing with the advertising was becoming a giant challenge, and we'll talk more about that when we reminisce as well, because that was always part of the fun.
Yep.
Anyway, moving on. So what games have you been playing lately, Mr. Granger?
Oh, mine's super easy. I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, excellent.
And that's it.
Have you been playing version 5? 5e?
Yeah, we're playing two different versions. We're playing the Dungeons and Dragons 5e version, and we were playing the first Tuesday of every month. Greg did come in and sit on those a couple of times, and I recently am handing over the mantle, the scepter of power, over to Dave Farr. This Tuesday will be my last. So it was never intended that I would be the DM for the entire, from now to infinity. And I can't believe it's been 2 years, actually, already. It doesn't seem like that long. And I ran Russ kind of the same time as you, if you remember, is the Horde of the Dragon Queen adventures.
Yep.
But about halfway through, I veered off and just kept the framework of Horde of the Dragon Queen and
did your own thing.
Went in my own direction.
Cool.
Actually, I'll give you guys an update. I don't even know if Craig knows this. At the very 2 sessions ago, they had a chance to go through a dimension door. And I said to them, okay, if you walk through, this is it. Dimension door for real. I'm not joking. And they all were like, yeah, screw it. Let's go. Boop. So they essentially ended the adventure of Horde of the Dragon Queen. And just for a couple, 3 adventures.
They hit a reset button, did they?
We hit a reset button. And so what I did was I switched it because Horde of the Dragon Queen was getting really dark. It was kind of dark and gothic and gritty. And so I switched them to completely high fantasy, where they're all the same characters and they have no memory of the world they're in, but the inhabitants of that world know who they are. So they're kind of liking that. So Andy plays an old soldier who's now an adventurer. And so he's a captain in the kingdom of the guard. And so they're like, oh, Captain, you're back. Glad to see you. We have some new news from you since you've been away. And he's like, okay. They're kind of doing that thing.
Cool.
The only thing I feel kind of bad about is we have one newer player named Ryan. He hasn't played Dungeons and Dragons before, and I don't think he quite knew. So he stepped through the dimension door, and he's like, "Okay, great. So what? When do we go back and find out what happened with the old adventure?" And I'm like,
"You don't.
You don't." And he's like, "What?"
Uh-oh. Well, some people need closure, Rafe. You got to figure that out.
I know. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just narrate the closure of where they are and then keep it as a story hook if they ever do go back.
You should have him find a Palantir from Harry Potter, a little pool of water that he can look into and see what happened in the other world.
That's a good idea.
That
actually.
way, and that gives him his closure.
Yeah, I have an idea for doing that, but not that. But yes,
or a pensive, or whatever it was. What did he call that? A pensive? I can't remember what Dumbledore called it. But anyway, something like that.
Yeah, the pensive, I think. Yeah. And then the other Dungeons and Dragons I've been doing is one of our players, Greg Ivany, got bored. He just all of a sudden, 2 months ago, he's like, I'm bored with 5e. He's like, I want the granular. I want to go back to the granular. And so he announced he wanted to play 3.5, meaning our next set of sessions would be 3.5.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm in. And a few other, Ryan said he's in, and a couple other people said they were in, and everybody else was like, no, thou shalt not play 3.5 Pathfinder. And so Greg went ahead and started up his own group, so now I'm in 2 D&D sessions.
Oh, good.
Oh.
So are you enjoying?
They both playing on Tuesdays?
Both playing on Tuesdays, yep.
Nice.
Oh, so we won't be seeing you anymore.
No, yeah, I'm now gone. This is the 200th episode, Craig, and sayonara. No, we're not sure. I'm not sure about the second one because we don't have a set date. That's a variable date. So it's not like it's the third Tuesday of every month.
I have to ask, Raef, because you're pretty much into the role-playing aspect mostly of these sorts of things. So
yes.
How are you finding going back to 3.5? Are you basically like such a role player? Like, it doesn't really matter to me. The mechanics are really kind of secondary anyway, and I'm just role playing. Or do you really find it affects how you play your characters, whether you're in 5e or 3.5?
Actually, a very astute question, and I'm glad you asked that because I was concerned about that as well. And one is, if you recall, Russ and Craig, 3.5, at least in my memory, is essentially advanced second or maybe even 3.
Right.
So I do that thing that Craig does. Remember when Craig wasn't playing War Machine and Russ, you and I are playing, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm not really sure like how you throw. And Craig's like, oh, well, what you do is you pick up a one-handed throw and it's 2d6, and then I'm like, how do you know the rules? He's like, I read the rule book. It's the same thing with me. All of a sudden, I'm like 5-foot step, and I'm like, no, my AC for leather armor is +2. Just out of nowhere, all my old memory of rules are coming back.
Oh.
And the second thing that's happening is I said, Greg, I'm a little concerned that everybody's going to get mad with me and be like, Raef, I can't believe you didn't know to shift left, advanced 1, full rush, and then do all the 3.5 mechanics. And Greg's like, no, play your character. That's what I want. It's not always perfect. It's not always going to be an oiled machine. So if you don't do the right maneuver, awesome. That'll be fun. And that's kind of the pact we all 4 of us make, is we're each playing our own character.
Well, that's cool.
It's not just Christian, who's really good at that stuff, going, Raef, what you should do is...
So, but how are you liking it compared to 5? I mean, do you miss 5? Do you even notice a difference?
I have to admit, it's scratching a certain kind of itch with technicality. I'm playing a rogue, and Craig will appreciate this. I'm doing a skill-based rogue, and my skills matter. Like, I can do things with my skills that those other characters can't do. And in 5e, it's really like we're all everybody can do everything. It's either advantage or not advantage.
Yeah, see, I don't find that at all in 5e, but I think it depends on how you play. Like, for example, my daughter's a bard, and the other guys can't do disguises and get past the... But I, as a DM, enforce that kind of stuff. So if you don't have the disguise skill, I make it really hard for that to work out for you. So I do, but I because I set the difficulty high. So if you don't have a good plus and you don't have a good bonus, then... If you don't have disguise skill, you don't get to add your proficiency. You're at maybe a 25% chance it's going to work out for you. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah. I wasn't doing that in my campaign, and that could be my failing. So everybody's sort of generic and more fluffy.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, I got a lot of kudos. So I'm playing with Ryan, Christian, and Rich, and Christian and Ryan are very matrixy and really get into the depth of the rules and what's it called? Build power characters.
I thought Ryan had never played before.
He hasn't. His only experience has been 5e. But he's really
diving. But he's diving into the grain of the new game.
All in, baby.
Yeah, because he likes when he plays Stellaris or Civ 6 or anything. He reads forums. He really researches, and he really enjoys that. But what was interesting was that, Russ, I brought a lot of role-playing to the 3.5e world.
Okay.
And so they were just eating it up. And Rich does too. Rich role-plays.
Yeah.
So they were enjoying... Our players are enjoying the balance of crunchy, grid-based combat with Raef's role-playing.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, the problem I have is my kids don't really... They like combat, but they don't want to have a 3-hour battle. So, like...
That is the downside.
They want the battle to be over, and then we're back to story progressing. So what I find is like they like the high drama battle, and then we're back to story. And so most of our sessions are really, really like old school D&D before there were mats. That's what I find great about.
That's how I do 5e.
We do have a mat because it's more for just so you can get relative positioning. Like I know he's closer to the orc than I am, kind of thing. But the fact that there's squares on there is only really roughed out for ranges of arrows and ranges of spells. It's not to do with flanking or anything else. And the battles are over in like 15, 20 minutes. But we don't do that to crank in a lot of battles. We do that because we really get back to the storytelling and the sneaking past the guards and all those kinds of things that add to story. But that's what I like. But again, if you wanted a tactical miniature combat game between your role-playing sessions, then that's 3.5 definitely. 5 does not have that. 5 has none of that. There's not enough of that in there to give you that crunchy, super serious combat situation, which I know a lot of people love.
Right.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you guys have found. That's awesome. It's so cool that you guys have 2 D&D campaigns running at once. That's fantastic.
It is pretty cool. It's time consuming, but it's been fun so far.
Sweet.
And then my last game, I haven't played. Oh, I take that. I wrote down chess. So I've been playing chess with Dave Farr on Chess with Friends.
Oh, okay.
Just all of a sudden, I'm like, he plays a lot of chess. So he and I have played 6 games, and he's beat me every single time.
A seasoned chess player will do it to you.
Oh my gosh, I've never been a good chess player.
Right.
And then the other game I have been playing though is Shadows over Brimstone, and I just love that game. That game is so fun. I've been playing that about once a month.
Yeah, you should play 40K chess. Have you guys played that before?
No, how do you do that?
So it's a Steam game. I want to say it's like $20 now, and it's chess, but all the pieces are Warhammer 40,000 models. And there's different factions you can play. So you can basically have Chaos Space Marines versus Marines, and when the pieces take each other, they actually fight. Now
just like in Star Wars?
Well, yes, except the taking piece always wins, so there's no randomness. It's not an action game. It's still chess. So when my pawn takes your pawn, my pawn always wins, except you get to see my pawn decapitate your pawn with a chainsword.
Oh, that's so cool.
Right? So it's still chess, but it's got all that. There was an old school game that came out in the 90s called Battle Chess.
I remember that.
The same idea, right? It was chess, but it was a bunch of animated medieval pieces, and they'd kill each other. And so you'd play the game just to see how the various kill maneuvers happen. This is that same idea, but with 40K theming. And Ross Watson was involved and did a lot of the dialogue and stuff. So
oh, that's cool.
Not his voice.
Do they have it? They don't have an app for that. Can't play it.
I don't think there's a. Well, no, there might be. Actually, there might. I take that back. There might be. I'll have to go look that up. I want to say it's called Regicide or something weird. Let me Google that anyway. Continue.
All right.
So, Raef, you got anything else on your list there?
Well, Regicide is 40K chess from the Dan Abnett books, so that would make sense.
Okay.
Regicide.
That's all I have for games played.
All right. Craig, how about you?
I played an awesome giant 1,500-point battle of Conflict 47 last night with Russ.
Nice.
Wow. 1,500 points, huh?
1,500 points.
Yeah.
That's a lot of guys. I had 18 order dice. Russ, you had what, 15?
I had 13 order dice.
Oh, 13. That's right.
Yes, 13 order dice to your gajillions. Gajillions number I would use.
It was a lot.
What side are you playing again, Craig?
I'm Americans. I have a combination of First Armored regular troops and Army Ranger. I have a platoon of Army Rangers.
How are you liking it after, what is this, like your 8th game, 12th game?
I love it. I love it. I can't even. Last night I used my medium walker for the first time.
All right, let me just, Raef, let me just set the stage for Craig's obsession with this game now. And by the way, I say this with love because I also am obsessed with this. I haven't been obsessed with a miniature game like this since Warhammer 40,000. And the reason, and well, that's not true. I also love War Machine still, but the reason this game has got me is because it has the squad building and customization elements that 40K has. And because it's set on bolt action, there's such a depth of models for each of the factions. And all they've had to do is add a couple cool new weird ones to all of a sudden, disconnect it from historical. And I love it now, too, because I got vehicles. I got everything, right? It's got all the stuff. So anyway, Craig is so passionate about this now that there is a unit in the game called a spotter. And what the spotter does, and this is kind of like Flames of War a little bit, what the spotter does is the spotter can either be a spotter for artillery or a spotter for aircraft. So Craig bought one as a spotter for aircraft. Now what you do with a spotter for aircraft is you choose a target, he spots them, and the next turn you start rolling dice to see if these spotters called in aircraft show up. And then you just put a marker down where the plane comes, you resolve the attack, and you take the marker away. Well, Craig, instead of using a marker, fully painted up a full scale World War II, was it a Spitfire?
Yes.
Oh, neat.
Spitfire with it's awesome. He's got the weathering on it and the smoke markers on the rings from the gun. It looks amazing. And he's like, oh, look, my plane came in, plop, right in the middle of the table, and the whole store's like, well, that's cool. And he's like, yeah, it's here for 30 seconds and gone. Whoop. We're like,
Yeah.
we're like, what the? But it was awesome. The game looks fantastic. The models are great. The rules are a boatload of fun. And what makes it really work for me is like, so for the Germans, we have these units. The Germans have a lot of weird war units. They have werewolves, they have vampires, and they have zombies, right? In addition to some really cool walker tanks and everything else. Now, the werewolves and the zombies in particular, as you can imagine, they're really cool, very fast, and dangerous if they get to you. But because of how this game is designed based on bolt action, guns are still really, really good even against werewolves. So rightly so, werewolves, without having some serious support, will get gunned down on the way in to attack somebody. You can't just run where... They're not like Tyranids in 40k. You just run them across the table and wipe everything out. They really are going to die on the way in there. Even if they get to the squad, there's not a good chance of them totally wiping them out unless there's suppression fire going on or something, which makes sense. However, because the game has such really good missions, having these fast and tough units, they don't really kill a lot, although unless you get really lucky, or you can hunt down some little solo dudes like the Observer. What they are really good at is taking objectives and grabbing items and just really outflanking and outmaneuvering your opponents because the vampires fly and things like that. So they're really awesome, but just in a different sort of way. So what makes the game also really great and replayable is the core rulebook's got a bunch of missions, but then any of the missions really from any of the bolt action rulebooks or supplements, of which there are many, also completely and totally work pretty much right out of the box with Conflict 47.
I have several questions. Craig.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes.
Remember, I don't know what game it was, but I was watching a game between you and Russ.
Beyond the Gates of Antares.
Yes.
Nope. I do want to talk about that too. It was Conflict 47.
Okay.
And you guys were playing
Conflict 47. Okay.
Yeah, and you guys were playing, and something happened in the game, mechanics-wise, and all three of us were like, that wasn't so fun, and that wasn't so cool. Like, I can't remember what the mechanic was, but do you guys remember? Because if you're loving it this much, it's like you solved it. Like, something happened where it was a little unbalanced, or it wasn't quite...
Yeah, no, I vaguely remember something along those lines in a conversation, and me go,
I know
like,
it was. We don't... What? So we are cheating a bit. So
that's what I want to hear. Okay.
I don't like True Line of Sight.
Well, explain for the listener what that was that happened.
It was the True Line of Sight.
I have grown to despise True Line of Sight in a miniature game. And the reason I do is because it really does set up some... You either get into arguments, even with your best friend playing casually, it just happens. And then the other problem is it's really impossible to populate the table in such a way to really control lines of fire with woods and stuff with True Line of Sight. You either have to agree, there is no area terrain in Conflict 47 that blocks line of sight. You have to just look down, and if you can see between two branches in a tree, you can shoot the guy, technically by the rules, right? Now, I don't know that too many people actually play that way. I think most people
in all of the
right.
I mean, as far as we're professionals, the videos that people make for YouTube, all of them are like, okay, and we're just playing. You can't see through these woods,
Right.
Okay,
so
that's what I was wondering.
But we aren't doing that. We've just been fighting in cities.
Well, what works for us? Two things work for us. One, the store we play at has amazing. Adler Hobby. We talked about this before. Amazing terrain, and he has some tables set up. And because he plays a lot of bolt action, which also has this rule, they have tables that are covered in hedgerows, which you literally can't see through, or with really heavy buildings and terrain, which again block line of sight completely realistic, as you would
and
look.
Just make for awesome looking.
And makes for awesome looking tables. So that solves the problem. So if you happen to have a store with a whole bunch of tables so you don't get bored of different places filled with hundreds of dollars of pre-made terrain, which is what Corden has, it's awesome. If you don't, you just play with some house rules that say, this bit of felt counts as a forest that blocks line of sight.
Because I loved World War II and tried out bolt action. I really like Gates of Antares. I thought I was going to really enjoy Conflict 47, but when I saw it, I was like, meh.
Yeah, Antares...
I would have rather played Gates of Antares.
I would say Antares is a better rule set, and I think Craig and I would still be playing Antares over 47 if they had the depth of field in terms of model range and list range, and they still don't, and it's mostly because, well, one, they just haven't been around long enough, but two, the other factions aren't viable options yet fiscally for money because the main models aren't plastic yet. So for Craig or I to pick up a second army to keep the variety going, it's hundreds of dollars for half the size of the army of the plastic ones we have today. So that's kind of holding us back. And so instead we went off and got Conflict 47, which has a rule set that feels close, but is not quite as good. I think the D10 system is a stronger system, and they've done some really cool ideas with Antares that they did not do in bolt action that I thought were clever. But that said, Conflict 47 is a lot of fun. The depth is great, and other things in my world are happening that are really got me into that era of combat. Even though it's weird, I can stay out of the historical problems I've had in the past. But like I'm playing Battlefield 1 of the things, and it's just sort of getting me into this stuff. So I'm really
it works for you for your historical thing. You're right.
Yes, because it's not because of the werewolves and the weird and the walkers and things. It's different enough, like Dust was or Dystopian Wars is, that I can call this different and not real. Yep.
Right.
And for me, it's just the sheer the number and breadth of the units you have as options. So, like, looking at my Antares army, I have one cannon. I have one little mortar guy. I have my basic troops. I have my jump troops. I have bike troops. And now I have a couple vehicles and a couple types of drones, and that's it. Whereas if you just look on, like, any web page at the bolt action stuff for just America, you've got countless tanks, you've got countless different kinds of cannons, you've got countless different kinds of support weapons, you've got all these different teams, you've got snipers running around, you've got flamethrowers running around.
It's insane.
And like if you like my army yesterday, I had 2 regular infantry squads, I had a machine gun team, I had a sniper team, I had 2 bazooka teams, I had a flamethrower team, I had the Rangers, I had the heavy armored infantry, the weird war heavy armored infantry. I had the M16 meat chopper, the half track, the open topped half track that has 4 50 caliber machine guns that they used to use for anti-aircraft, but they also used to just turn it on infantry, which I never really got a chance to do because
my walker took that baby out.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. I had a giant walker. I have a small scout walker. I have a mortar team. And I had all of that in a 1,500-point game where we've played like a 2,000-point game for Antares, and it's like spam.
Yeah.
Because you don't have that much depth.
You don't have the depth of model range. Yeah. So
I have 5 of these units, and I've got 2 of these units, and so
I love where Antares could be 2 years from now, but it's not there yet, and that's one of the challenges. So I'm ready for it. I'm not. Yeah. I've got my models carefully packed, and when more, and I'll happily play a game of Antares anytime. But hopefully, when the plastics start hitting the street and other people get energized about it, I'll be ready.
Right. Okay. All right.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Craig, anything else on your list there?
No, that's the only thing I played. What about you?
I haven't played much either because a lot of stuff happening. The only other thing I have to add besides our Conflict 47 game was, of course, my level 7 Omega Protocol game. We are now we just completed the 3rd of 5 missions from the new supplement, and it was great. Really cool mission. Lots of guys on there. I had huge amounts of adrenaline, and it was awesome. So kudos to my little squad, to my group of players there. It was a close one, but they beat me back and got through it, and they're on to the next level. So looking forward to that.
Oh, cool. What
about modeling? So, Raef, you done any modeling lately?
I actually have, but it's only in the purchasing category. Oh. So So Shadows Over Brimstone, if a lot of people know that game by Flying Frog, the characters you get in the box is a mix of both men and women models. Yeah. So, for example, there's the saloon girl. You flip the card over, it's the piano player.
Yep.
So they give you the playability to play both the male and the female variant of a certain class. Uh-huh. But for the models, it's random. So, for example, the saloon girl is the saloon girl. You don't get the piano player. Uh-huh. Well, I missed the memo on the massive awesome Kickstarter they had out of like 2 years ago or whatever the time frame is, where you could be like, $200 sponsor or whatever the number is, and then you could get all the variants and all the cool upgrades and whatever. Anywho, they finally released it to the regular public. So I picked up a couple of the variants of the characters that I play. So I have both the male model and the female model. So I was super psyched about that. And then the other thing they bought, and I haven't bought it yet, is one of the characters uses a 6-shooter with different bullets. And they made like a resin 6-shooter revolver like disc. It's probably like the size of a donut. And you can put actual bullets, like plastic bullets in it, so that when you use your special bullet, you pull it out. And I'm like, that's pretty sweet. So I haven't purchased that yet, but I did get, I want to say maybe 4 models. So I'm looking forward to at some point putting them together. I have the the modeling table that I use is in the playroom where my home office is, and I walk by it every day and go, oh, yeah, remember when I used to sit at that and build models?
You should do that again, Rafe. It's good. It's cathartic. It's very cathartic.
I know. I'll explain why when we get to other.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, I have not. I've had kind of a busy couple weeks here, and I'm going to be busy through the middle of November. But once that's passed, I have got my airbrush things are lined up and ready to go. Rafe, Craig, how about you? What have you been doing?
Well, in the it's been 2 weeks. I put together my Rangers. I was using a bunch of my regular infantry models that had the right guns to kind of proxy my Ranger squad. So I had it would have been fine normally, but it wasn't fine for me. I wanted a purpose-built squad, so they would have all kinds of gear on them and humping big packs and stuff. And so I put together and painted my Ranger squad, and I got a second heavy infantry squad, because I kind of wanted a whole. In my world, those are Rangers also. So I've everybody's decaled up and everything. They've all got their insignia on them, and I've made all of my heavy infantry are Rangers as well. So. I guess that's the other thing I did was I put decals on everybody. So the whole army is all gussied up now. So that was me. So that's just 10 models.
All right.
That is a low count for you.
It is a low count for Craig. Normally it's hundreds. So What about other stuff? Rafe, why don't you kick us off here? What about books, movies, TV shows, other things? What are you doing?
All right. Well, I got back into WoW.
Did you now?
WoW.
Oh, where's my negative achievement noise? The negative achievement noise is long gone. I'll give you a positive achievement now. There you go.
All right. So anybody who follows MMOs, the new expansion came out called Legion, and there's a strategic reason why I got back into WoW. My wife and her business partner opened a yoga studio. So she's currently working her full-time job, and it's called Heated Power Yoga. That's the type of yoga, and the name of the studio is Soulfire Power Yoga, and it's out here on the Seacoast, and they just opened it last month. And I knew she'd be super busy because she's basically working her regular day job on top of working, all the hours it takes to be an entrepreneuress. So I'm like, it's kind of a good time to get immersed into, an MMO when it sucks all the hours out of your life. So it's been kind of fun. It's been keeping me entertained while she's been busy. And the new expansion's fun. I won't even waste airtime with it since this isn't a computer game show, but it's been fun. It's getting good reviews. People are happy with Blizzard. It's pretty cool. Yeah,
we just had Luke Ritalik on last episode, and he was raving about the WoW. So he said the new
he likes it too.
The new expansion was definitely hitting it, and he said even some friends of his that had never played WoW before were getting into it.
They're bringing back. It is bringing back a lot of people that were subbed before, and they're coming back and they're enjoying it, and I'm enjoying it. Oh, this has been kind of critical though to it. There's a guild out there called Old Timers Guild, and it is cross game. So, WoW, EverQuest, Lord of the Rings, Xbox games, whatever. It's just a guild of us, basically. People of a certain age, including if you're 24, but of the right mindset to you're just there to have fun. And so I joined that when I was playing another MMO called Black Desert Online that Ryan recommended to just fool around with. And I joined that guild. And so I was like, well, I'm going to see what the people are like in this guild in WoW. So it makes it different. There's sort of an instant 15 people to chat with when you play. And that, to me, is what makes all the difference. So that's been pretty cool. And then I played Stellaris on the PC through Steam. Did you check that one out, Russ?
I've heard pretty good things about it. What did you think of it?
I really liked it. Mm-hmm. I'm not really good at the 4X expansion games, but for whatever reason, man, it really captured my attention. I want to say I have about 100 hours into that game.
All right, cool.
It was very cool. I really recommended it. The reviews on it are that the game stalls in the mid-game part of the game. I'm so sort of a noob when it comes to these that I didn't notice that until about my third or fourth race playthrough. Yep. So now I'm like, and I don't win the game either, but I certainly see where the game stalls. So I'm waiting for, they probably already have some expansions, the company's talking about how they want to fix that mid-game stall. So once I got a little bored with it, that's when I switched to WoW. Then the other thing that I think you guys know a little bit about, but it's kind of heated up, is I decided about 2 years ago I wanted to play the guitar.
Yes.
So I had tried playing the guitar past in my life, and anybody who's ever tried to play guitar before and hasn't succeeded, remember that part where you like go, I'm going to do this, and then you start to learn the chords and your hands hurt, your fingers hurt, and you haven't built up your calluses yet, and you're like, God, why can't I play Stairway to Heaven? Like, I don't understand. And so I made this commitment to myself that when I got to that point where I wanted to quit, I was not going to quit. And I did do that. And so about, 8 months ago, I bumped into these dads that I've known for football for the past 6 years. And one of them's like, hey, Raef, I heard you're learning guitar. You should come down in Eric's basement. He's got a whole studio down there. And I'm like, nah, guys, I can't even string 4 chords together. I don't play guitar. I just have a guitar and go to lessons. They're like, no, you should come jam with us. Oh, one thing leads to another. We say that for months. We never do it. We finally go in the guy's basement. The guy, Andy, he's been playing guitar for about 20 years. And he can play all these songs. Like, he's just ripping out these songs. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And Eric plays bass. He's been in bands before. We're all in our 40s. He gets behind the drum kit. Boom, 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 boom. He's nailing out some drum kit. So Andy starts playing Jesse's Girl, Rick Springfield, Jesse's Girl, on guitar. And Eric's banging it on drums. I can't play the chords, Russ. I'm just standing there with my guitar. And so I start singing the words to Jesse's Girl because that's when I went to high school, junior high. Right. And they're like, Raef, you can sing. And they get all excited, and they've heard me announce games. So they're convinced I can sing. I'm like, guys, I am not a singer. Like, I just have sung the song 182 times that at some points I can kind of mimic it and sound halfway okay. So they didn't believe me, so they stick a microphone up to me, and I, of course, tank because there's a mic, and I'm like, oh, I sound terrible. Anyway, one thing leads to another, and I go, you know what? Life's too short. I'm going to try to learn how to sing Jesse's Girl. Like, I'm just going to take it as a challenge. So at my guitar lessons, I take a couple singing lessons. Lo and behold, I can halfway pull off some Jesse's Girl. I got a cheat here and there. I can't quite hit some high notes, so I go to some middle notes that the teacher said, you know what, you can't go there, go here, and it'll be okay. And so next thing I know, Russ, we have 10 songs that we play in the basement. And I play rhythm guitar on all of them except the one I sing. Next thing I know, Raef can suddenly put together an A chord, a D chord, a C chord, an F chord, a G chord.
Oh, wow.
Like, playing in a band has accelerated my skills unbelievable.
Nice.
And part of it's because I'm not the lead guitar player. Andy's been playing for 20 years. So I just have to backfill what he's doing. And so it kind of lets me feel a little bit freer, and I'm not so nervous and scared. But we put 10 songs together, and we played my backyard in, gosh, I don't even remember, June or July, and we had 75 people show up.
Were you nervous?
No, I wasn't nervous. 2 weeks before, I was nervous. I mean, I was like quaking in my boots. But then I got to that place. Craig probably knows this with a play. You know, Craig, when you're just like, all right, I've practiced. It's all I can do. I just have to go do it. I had gotten to that place where I was just not nervous anymore. And so we had a blast. The crowd went crazy. We played the 10 songs. We played Jesse's Girl. We played Go Your Own Way by Fleetwood Mac. We played a couple other Tom Petty songs. We played Stitches by Shawn Mendes. Yep. We were just all over the place. And the best part was we found a mom who basically is the lead singer now. So I sang Jesse's Girl. A couple of the other guys sing a couple other songs. And we're actually gigging again. We have another gig this Saturday. Anybody wants to come out here on the Seacoast. And we're up to 17 songs now.
Nice.
So guitar has definitely taken my new interest. And then here's the funny part of this. I will totally forget that I'm telling all of you guys this. Totally forget. Okay. And I know I'll be at a convention. I'll be at Adepticon. I'll be like, Raef, I really heard how you play guitar. And I'm like, how do you know about that? So anybody listening out there, if you ever wanted to give an instrument a try when you're an old fart like me, it's totally doable. I got one more thing to say about the guitar. It's like miniatures. You know how these guys are always talking about their guitars and it's got this and this pickup and rosewood frets and blah, 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 blah. I never got all that until I bought my first electric. And I played borrowing the band's electric guitar for like 5 months. I didn't have my own electric guitar. I just had an acoustic. And so I did some research and stuff. And so now I tested a whole bunch. I probably played, 8 different guitars in a shop. I settled on the guitar that felt really good and just right for me. And it's like my pride and joy now. It's like my favorite Army. I love that guitar. I have a American-made Fender Stratocaster, and it's just awesome to play.
Wow.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
Raef. Well, congratulations on picking up a new skill. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Very, very
It's
good.
fun. Oh,
Very cool.
And we forgot. We have forgot to record the first gig. This time around, we're going to try to remember to record it on video. If I'm brave enough, maybe I'll throw up, my Twitter feed or something. I'll throw up a couple songs or something. We heard some of the recordings that people recorded on their cell phone. Some of the songs we sounded pretty musically, instrumentally, were pretty good. Vocally, we were, we had never played outdoors before. Craig, what are those things called? Monitors? When the singers have those.
Yep.
We didn't have monitors. So
that makes it hard.
Oh my gosh, we could not hear each other. So we singing wise, we're a little bit flat, a little bit sharp. I think people had so many beers they didn't notice. But when we listened back, we were like, "Ooh, ouch, that was rough." So it's for fun. Are we joining Idol? No, but it's been a super fun endeavor.
Cool.
Good.
Yeah,
Well, that's awesome. Well, that's fantastic. How about you, Craig? What have you been doing?
Let's see. For TV, I did watch the Walking Dead season premiere, and
Cool.
I won't spoil anything. I'll just say that I think I'm done. I'll watch it. I'll watch it for a while just to kind of see how it goes. But the episode was extremely well crafted and extremely well organized to the point where it was ultimately, for me, it was too well crafted, and it pulled me out of, like, going in, having read the comics. I was like, oh, well, I know what I expect, but I also know they know what I expect. And so, what they ultimately did was very well done. It was it was the goriest episode they've done yet, but it was, I felt, when you're watching a movie and then it becomes just egregious and it feels like they're just doing things to kind of get you get pulled out of the willing suspension of disbelief goes away because you kind of see the wires behind the or the thought. Yeah, exactly. Excuse me, I don't know what's going on all of a sudden, and that's kind of how I felt. So, and the same night I watched that, I then went and got caught up watching 2 more episodes of Westworld and was like, I love this show. So Westworld is awesome.
Very, very good.
The special effects are great. The characters are great. The plot just keeps getting deeper. And I understand, because I've talked to a bunch of people about it, that it does start it for some. I loved it. I just loved the world. I loved kind of like immersing in the whole thing. And I did not feel at all that it went too slow. But I know a lot of people that I've talked to have been like, oh, I don't know. It kind of feels slow. I get it. It happens over and over, whatever. And if that's you, I would recommend that you keep watching through. Like, I've seen through 4 episodes now, and it really starts to churn forward.
Very cool. I'm really liking it too. It's fantastic. It's a really cool world, and I think this could be another one. I think HBO's got another massive hit on their hands, similar to Game of Thrones here with this thing.
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be that big or not yet. I think it's a little too soon to tell, but I think it's got the potential.
I'm calling it now, baby. Huge.
Okay, you can call it now.
Prediction.
You call it now. Huge.
Yeah.
It's going to be huge.
It's going to be huge. I'm claiming that as one of my predictions for the prediction episode.
Okay.
All right.
I'm really enjoying this season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Luke recommended that, so I jumped. He recommended so many things. I have to keep going back to remind myself what he was.
What was
recommending.
that again? Right.
But I am enjoying the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the Ghost Rider season. I have no knowledge or ownership or memories whatsoever of Ghost Rider, so it's not bothering me at all. Like it's bothering you, Russ. I know that he's not on a motorcycle.
No, I don't care. I don't watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. anymore.
No, but you didn't.
He's not on a motorcycle.
I think you might have made a snide comment or two.
No, it's just he's not on a motorcycle, which is interesting. It doesn't bother me.
Right.
I don't know Ghost Rider from anything either.
Anyway, I'm really enjoying it. I think they've really got a cool plot on their hands dealing with the Sokovia Accords from Captain America: Civil War and how that's kind of like playing out on their level of reality. And it's really neat. I like the plot that's unfolding. It's really cool. And I am listening on Audible. To Dandelion Dynasty Book 2, Wall of Storms by Ken Liu.
Yeah.
And it's long. It's long. 30 hours long.
That's long. That's a good sized book.
It's
a good value there on Audible.
It is. Yeah. Yep. It's a great value on Audible. Exactly. You can get that book for free.
Yes. If
you wanted to.
Go to the D6generation.com, click the Audible link, and get a free trial and a free book that's yours forever to keep, even if you cancel at any time.
That's right. That's right.
And hash browns.
And we'll give you hash browns if we ever run into you with hash browns in our hands.
Rafe will come to your home and cook you hash browns.
I will not do that. But yeah, and if you're going to do it, if you're thinking, if you've all been like, for so long they talk about Audible and that's really the only way they consume books now, maybe I'll give it a try. Well, if you give it a try, could you please, sir, please go to our website and click through from there. Thank you.
Exactly. So
that's me.
What
about you?
My stuff. Well, we're still enjoying Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Just finished season 2. The kids and I really liking that show a lot. Still, I've been a while since I watched Buffy, so it's like I'm watching it for the first time again. I remember nothing because it was like 10 years ago or more now. No, it's more. It's like 20 years ago actually. That's kind of scary, really. Yeah, Buffy first premiered in '96. So yeah, that'd be 20 years. Then also, as Craig mentioned, enjoying Westworld. Also, I'm on episode 10 now of Luke Cage. Loving that series. Huge fan of Power Man. Can't wait for Iron Fist. Talked about that all last time. Still loving that. Also, I think I mentioned in the last episode when we were in Dunkin' Donuts with Luke that I was excited to start watching Timeless. Have you guys seen Timeless yet?
I have not, but you have good things to say about it.
I do. So my family and I really got into it. So the girls saw the previews for it. So my girls are really getting into stuff, historical context stuff. And Timeless is one of those shows where the costuming is great. So the premise of the show is rich billionaire builds a time machine on his own in essentially a lab, warehouse basement, as always. Bad guys discover rich billionaire has built time machine. Bad guys steal time machine to go do something. Fortunately, rich billionaire has the original prototype time machine under a tarp in the back corner of the warehouse. So therefore, the good guys can now use the prototype to go chase the bad guys through time. Basically, the plan. In a nutshell. However, what's cool about it is they're not constantly traveling through time. They go back in time. The bad guys are up to something. The good guys try to foil it. No spoilers, but foiling does not always go as well as you'd think. Everybody returns to the present day to do other plotting, and whilst there, they start discovering the small and sometimes big impacts that have happened to today based on some of the things, small and big things they did back in the past.
Oh, that's very cool.
And the first, for example, was the Hindenburg. So the very first episode, they go back to the Hindenburg. In the second episode, and this isn't really spoilers, so I'm going to tell you what happens. So does the Hindenburg still crash after they go back? In the second episode, and there's some really cool moral quandaries in the show. For example, in the second episode, they go back, the bad guys go back to the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. The good guys are there, and one of the good guys is African-American. And he's sitting there standing, so we're just going to let the assassination of Lincoln happen? And well, yeah, because that's what happened. We have no idea what kind of negative impact that would have on history. We can't change. But we're here. We can stop it. No, we're not. Well, what is the other guy doing? Well, so that's the question. Why are they there? Are they there? Are the bad guys there to stop the assassination of Lincoln? Are they there for some other reason? So it's really interesting stuff. Kids are loving it. They're really getting into the history side of it. The costuming and all the effects are really, really good. Writing's great. Good, fun show. I highly recommend it. And that's Timeless. I forget what network it's on. I just watch all this stuff on streaming now.
Yeah, that's what I do.
And the kids are getting into that. And what I'm surprisingly me now is how much the kids are finding. They're old enough now. My oldest is now freshman in high school. My youngest is in yeah, I know, right? And my youngest is in 7th grade. And what they're finding is they know enough history now. So we're playing Civ 6, right, Rafe? And my kids have always loved Civilization. I had them playing Civ Revolution on the Xbox 360, when they were like 5. And so we got the new version of Civ 6. We all got our laptops out. We're playing together. We're playing multiplayer. And Kit's like, "Oh, Socrates, I know that guy." It's like they're recognizing, and like a natural wonder will come up and make, "Oh, yeah, look, it's the Cliffs of Dover."
It's the pyramids.
Exactly. So they're like getting into it now. and the inventions and the different things. They're like recognizing the things. It's kind of cool. And then, of course, in Civ, you can go read about it. And what's also happening is the same thing is happening with Battlefield 1. So Battlefield 1 just came out on the Xbox and other platforms. And this is a World War I game. And it's got story, sort of a campaign mode. And it's also got a great multiplayer mode. I talk about it in the app of the up last time, so I won't get into that. But what's been fun with the kids is they were watching me play. And the very first scenario, you play in World War I again, remember, not 2, but 1. You're playing an African-American U.S. soldier. And my oldest daughter's sitting there. She goes, "Hey, Dad, is that an African-American playing in World War I?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Is that historically accurate? Because I know in the Civil War the African-Americans were able to fight, but then they outlawed it shortly after the Civil War ended. We just learned about that in school. How can in World War I they be doing that?" And I said, "Well, let's find out." And in Battlefield, as you play these things, it unlocks codex entries that you can read that are historical context for the game, that are actual historical context.
Cool.
So we brought it up and we're reading it.
Neat.
And it was awesome. So it was like a little learning moment in the middle of a video game. Pretty cool. So, yeah, I'm really enjoying these things. And there's a lot more going on here. So it's kind of fun that these video games have become sort of, you used to watch a documentary on TV to find this stuff out. And that's kind of a fun way to learn it while having fun in the game, and doing mass violence. But, we'll let that go. Anyway, so having a good time with that. So is that achievements?
That is achievement.
Wow.
Nice.
And now, in an attempt to bring a small amount of dignity and decorum to this otherwise base form of entertainment, and I use the term loosely, I am proud to present...
Oh, get on with it. It's time for App of the Up.
Seriously, Wakeland, I used to have my own segment, and now I'm relegating to announcing this pap.
Hey, you're lucky we still use you. Hey everyone, welcome back to another App of the Ep. This time around, it's Vermintide. Yeah, actually, apologies. I think I mentioned back in episode 199 I would do Vermintide, and then I got distracted by the new Shiny, and instead talked about Battlefield 1. But no, we really had a great time, and still are having a good time with Vermintide. So let me give you a little overview of this one. Immediately attracted by interest, it is out on Xbox One and on PS4 and on Steam also. So you can play this pretty much on your favorite platform. And as the name sounds, Vermintide, it is, of course, a Warhammer product, which is fantastic. So if you're a Games Workshop, a Warhammer fantasy fan, this game is already going to be calling to you. And when I first saw it and heard about it, I initially thought it was going to be Diablo-like. So the premise of the game is it is co-op. Up to 4 players pick one of 5 different roles. So you can be an Inquisitor with matching firearm pistols. You can be a fire wizard, as you might expect from Warhammer. You can be a dwarven warrior. You can be a elven archer, or you can be one of the Empire great swordsmen from the Empire. Really cool choices. And so I thought it was going to be like Diablo, but it's not. It's actually a first-person shooter style game, or it's not always a shooter depending on your class. But what's really cool about it is the co-op nature of it's really interesting. So you do play these sort of survival scenario sort of situations where you got to go do a story. Now, each of the levels is an encapsulated story in and of itself, and then you kind of jump ahead to another contained story. So it's kind of a campaign, but not really. But the cool part is that while you play each one of these, of course, you'll get new loot and level up your character and level up their looks, get better weapons, different weapons, and all those kinds of things. Each of the 5 classes do play very, very differently. So that, playing the fire wizard is nothing like playing the dwarf, which is nothing like playing the archer, which is nothing like playing the great swordsman or the inquisitor. So that's really cool. But what I really like is how the co-op nature of the game works. So, of course, as the name also suggests, the bad guys are Skaven. And they do a good job of bringing all the different Skaven into the game that you're familiar with if you're a Warhammer fan. So the Gobladier, the guys that throw the little goblet, the Globadiers, I guess they are. The guys that throw the poison globes are in there. The big gunner Skaven in there with the big machine guns are in there. Of course, tons and tons of regular Skaven are in there. You got the assassins with their claws leaping out of the ceiling. And what's interesting about this is you can't really split up because some of the Skaven can essentially one-shot you. So there's like one of the Skaven can jump on you and just start gutting into you. The assassins can leap upon you if you don't catch them right. And they'll just keep hacking until you basically die, no matter how good your health was, unless one of your buddies are there to knock them off of you. Or there's another Skaven that will actually throw a chain and grab it around you and start pulling you. And you'll be dragged down the corridor. And it'll eventually hang you with it and kill you unless your opponents can save you. So, I mean, your allies can save you. So it's not just about, everybody's fighting a bunch of random bad guys until you kill them all and someone's hit points might go to 0. There are things that'll one-shot you, which makes the Skaven particularly scary until you deal with them. What's really fun, though, is as you're going along and trying to finish the story, if one of your companions dies, they are eliminated, but not completely. What ends up happening is suddenly there'll be an objective on the map, and somewhere in some room, they are now being held prisoner, and you can go as essentially a little side quest and go to try to rescue them. So some really interesting ideas here in the first-person co-op genre and survival genre. Really interesting, very sort of dark and spooky with the Skaven. We really enjoyed the co-op nature of it. Really liked this a lot. Not disappointed to purchase at all. Also pretty affordable for a console title. I want to say it was like $30, which is pretty good. These new PC and console crossovers are making them a little more affordable. The only downside to it is my daughters wish there was a little more of a story. They wish that it does feel sort of like that each scenario is kind of a one-off, but they do love the fact that we can customize our characters with different gear and make them look different. So you can't really customize the look and appearance of your character, but it's kind of like Diablo. You're stuck with that character, but as you change and upgrade their equipment, of course, that equipment shows in the character and it gets cooler and cooler, and you can change the kind of staff the fire mage is wielding and that kind of thing. So Vermintide is a lot of fun. I think anyone who likes a good co-op first-person game will enjoy this. It's not as polished as I was hoping, but it's really, really solid, especially for a Warhammer entry. A lot of times these licensed Warhammer games are living on the license. This game actually is pretty a solid entry, and if you are a Warhammer fan, and particularly a Skaven fan, this is a must-buy, so definitely check it out. That's Vermintide, available on the platform of your pleasure.
Thank you for listening to another scintillating edition of App of the App, a segment in which,
hey, less of that, more just getting on with the show.
Seriously, Wakeland, you are like school in summer. No class.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Now, it would not be a good, correct, or in any way realistic retrospective of the last 200 episodes if we didn't talk about the third chairs.
Exactly.
Like these guys and gal, and yes, we are aware that there's a discrepancy there, and we'll try to fix it. No girls from now on, we promise.
What? Of course not.
That was a joke. That was a joke. It was a joke. Anyway, no, maybe not in this time. Anyway,
no.
So we meant to have them all be part of this big giant show, and we had all these cool things. Well, the best intentions and blah blah blah, and pavements in hell and whatnot. And this is just a crazy busy time of year for both of us now. Well, we sent out an email 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And this is going to give you some idea of what these third chair guys and gal are all about. Because in 2 days, they had 2 days to help us out. We wanted clips and remembrances, or maybe an update about what they're doing now. There are over 50 third chairs, just FYI, over the course of however many episodes we've been doing third chairs, and I'm not counting because I've just done way too much math today. Over 50 of them, about half of them in just the 2 days that we had, responded, which is crazy amazing. And more than half of those responded with audio clips so they could be a part of episode 200, even though we completely dropped the ball and only gave them 2 days.
Right.
So honestly, like, just let Russ, can we talk a little bit maybe about what did we go through, the two of you, when Raef decided to retire?
The two of me? Well,
the two of just the two of you.
Well, we went through. I think it was interesting when Raef decided to leave. I mean, it was a very I would say it was a pivotal moment in the show because we loved working with Raef. I felt that what made and I know you felt the same thing, that what made the show was less about the content, because Lord knows no one really believes we actually know what we're talking about, and it was really more about the chemistry, I think, between you, Raef, and myself.
Yeah, and the fact that each of us brought something so wildly different. Like I have hanging on my wall of the pub to this day that coat of arms that was made for us by a listener whose name tragically I've forgotten, and we'll try to remember before the rest of this episode is done. And it's the one that has the wise owl, which is apparently me. I don't get it. And then the checkerboard, which is Russ's analytical mind. And then it's three small shields across the top. It's all three-dimensional, all beautiful wood, hand-painted. And it was a sword on a green background on the little shield, individual shield for Raef at the top, because he was really into fantasy and he was really into Lord of the Rings online at that time. And then there's a single shield, a larger shield at the bottom that combines all three with a cool D6 in the middle. And there's the owl again, and there's the checkerboard again, and then there's an undead squirrel on a purple background, right, because Raef gets occasionally random. And I always look at that and I remember, like, that is, to me, that's what we started with, right? That's that strong, 3-point stance, as they say. And when Raef couldn't follow through, I mean, a lot of stuff was going on for Raef, and he had to leave for very good reasons. We were kind of at a loss, right? I mean, all of a sudden, our tripod was a little off.
Yes. And we didn't know, and what we weren't really sure about was if we had a different person every episode on, would we still be able to have any form of chemistry? Right. And the other thing you don't really know is, we were fortunate that many of the folks that joined us in the third chair had been on the air before on other shows, and so we knew that, they would sound great, but you don't always know that, and we were also nervous just if would it stand up. But Craig and I still felt really strongly that the third perspective, the two-man shows are done a lot. And so we wanted to be different and have the third person and rotate them in and out. And so we thought we'd give it a go. My biggest fear was, how do you unfortunately, Raef stayed with us long enough to be established so that it was actually people knew at least enough about us that there was a big enough pool that people would actually want to be on the show. And then the next question was, could we get scheduling out enough in advance? And I was pleasantly surprised how quickly it took off.
No, I mean, I remember those early days were agonizing because I wasn't sure we were going to have enough people.
Right.
Remember, and our original goal with the third chair was to get enough to get 6 months out.
Right.
Right. And we had all kinds of documents that we were shooting back and forth, and we were trying to brainstorm and who could we bring on and what were we trying to do. And it was very touch and go at the beginning as to, like, who could we reach out to and who would respond. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I mean, and that wasn't our immediate goal wasn't to go to the third chair either. Our immediate goal was, well, of course we have to replace Raef. But then, oh my God, we record every week for 2 hours, or back then, 4 hours in every other week. I mean, it was insane, and nobody was able to do it. So we didn't know what we were going to do, and then we hit on, I think Russ originally came up with this idea. Well, what if we get different people to come in, and that'll bring us that'll bring that perspective, and everything that Russ just said kind of started to fall together for us until now. We've got a stable of guys who love coming on, and they come on. Like, we try to do it once a year. Sometimes we miss a few months, and sometimes somebody's on maybe twice in 1 year. But it's a stable of guys, and we will expand it. And we would love to get some more women on the show. Right now, that just happened to be the way it worked out. But it's crazy when you think that we've been doing this for several years now with the third chair. We've got over 50 people who have stepped up and joined us for about 4 hours at a stretch. So that's if you think about it, that's more than 2 years of shows without repeating once. So then on top of that, we've repeated, of course, a bunch of times, like I said. So without further ado, these are the people that really, in our eyes, sort of saved the show and grew the show and grew it beyond our original vision, really.
Yeah, really. It was really, so we're really flattered and honored that so many people are willing to come on the show, and the caliber of the people that are willing to come on this show still blow me away every time. And it's not just, how well known they are or not. It's just the level of excitement they have for the games and the level of passion they have for the hobby and how happy they are to share that with everyone. It's so much fun, and it's so much fun to be able to share that with them and then them to share their excitement with you guys. So it's been a blast, and thank you so much for being on the show. And I can't wait to hear some of the things they sent in, because these guys, to turn this around, Craig, in 2 days, it's kind of crazy.
We've listened to I've listened to about 3.
Yeah. And
so we're going to be listening for the first time to some of these with you, because we just haven't had the time. And the response was so heartwarming and overwhelming that all these people were able to take time out of their schedules. Some of them wrote out emails. They didn't have access to recording equipment. Yeah. Many of them are on the way home from Essen.
Right.
That just happened. So we've got guys texting us from their phones. So it's really been crazy. And so let's listen to some of these. Let's start with what's that?
Who should we start with?
Well, in no particular order, because of the way that they came in, and then B, I screwed up trying to upload it to Dropbox, and then C, I had to forward each individual to Russ, and blah, blah, blah. They've been all screwed up, and they're in no particular order. But we'll start with John Gibson, who is the cowboy guy.
The cowboy guy. Let's listen.
The Logan, the Wolverine cosplaying Canadian.
Exactly. So here we go. Thank you, Logan. Thank you, cowboy guy. Yes, he is. For this submission here. Let's see what he has to say.
Hey, Russ and Craig, this is John Gibson, a.k.a. that cowboy guy who was warming the third chair way back in episode 144, Solo Games and Russian Rails Review. First of all, congratulations on making it to the big 200. That's like 1,400 episodes in dog podcasts. If dogs did podcasts, that is. I've been listening to the D6 generation for years, and I love listening to almost 4 hours of gamer nonsense every episode. You guys have your fingers on the pulse, nay, the jugular of the gaming industry, and it's always a treat to hear what topic you guys are tackling next. So for those of you listeners who don't know who the heck I am, let me give you a brief bio. I'm a Canadian game designer who likes to cosplay as Wolverine and occasionally does voices. Picture that with a capital V. I'm also the guy who did the bumpers that Russ and Craig play a couple of times each episode. Think of me as that gamer who does voices who isn't Eric Summerer. Which reminds me, I should probably record a few fresh ones to put into rotation. As for an update, I'm still designing board games as a hobby, though I haven't published anything since Infection, Humanity's Last Gasp. The solitaire game about trying to create a vaccine for a virus threatening to make mankind extinct. That game, by the way, is now available as an app on iOS and as a PC and Mac game on Steam. I am currently working on a 2-player version of the board game, which I'm tentatively calling Infection Virus with a Brain. Anywho, I don't want to take up any more time on your D6G extravaganza. I look forward to listening to it and hearing back from all the other great hosts that have shared the third chair with me, though not at the exact same time, because that would just be awkward.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you, that cowboy guy. So that was fantastic. Great summary of where he is now. Thanks for the update. And thank you for all the kind words, too, John. Really appreciate your passion. And what's great about John is that he was just a passionate listener who liked the show, also happened to do voices and other stuff. And when you remember when we first launched Patreon, one of the early stretch goals was to change all the bumpers. And we started talking about this. He reached out to us and said, hey, I do fun voices. I do crazy things. And so we submitted a few samples and we loved them. So we had him redo the bumpers. And then as we talked to him doing the bumpers live on Skype and stuff, we said, we should have you on the show. And so great happenstance, great third chair. I remember that episode very, very well. So thank you again, John, for that awesome awesome bit, and also for the awesome bumpers. I love those ones. My favorite is still Gollum. That's still my favorite one.
Absolutely.
Although Game Over Man is also a favorite. Excellent. Craig, some of these folks actually submitted us some text, some little words in writing they thought that we could share, since the time frame was so short. Not everybody has a microphone just sitting around their home that they can record on. So we got a nice email from Romeo Philip. Craig, what did he say?
Well, Romeo got himself a brand new car while he was skipping out on Gen Con.
Oh, nice.
And Romeo actually called me from his phone in his car, which is almost impossible to hear when it's going, and then parked and typed out a text for me because I couldn't remember what he was saying. So Romeo Phillip, of Wild West Exodus and of course more prominently Battle Foam fame, says, "Oh, how the time has passed. I would say I have been on the show more times than I remember. From slinging foam and bags to yapping up about Wild West Exodus. It has been a wondrous time with the D6G boys. One of my fondest memories was the Godfather-like setting we all attended for my annual sponsorship sign-up. Back in 2010 or 11, we all sat down at TempleCon at that cool little cigar bar they have in the hotel. Russ put on his pitchman hat, and Craig hung on for the ride." This is totally how it was. A pitchman was pitching another pitchman. The Jedi mind trick that was going on during that 30-minute conversation was going back and forth like a sword fight. As always, Battle Foam accepted the ransom terms, and we continued our awesome partnership for years to come. I bring this story up because you guys came into the whole thing super serious and ready to present this awesome plan, and little did you know that I was going to resign anyway. I was resign. That would be different. I was just debating with you to see your Pitchman presentation. The whole Battle Foam family loves you guys, and thanks for the years of amazing content and hard work. From a former podcaster host to you, I don't know how you guys do it. Hugs and kisses, which it wouldn't be Romeo if he didn't say hugs and kisses. Right. Romeo.
That was very kind, very nice. One thing we should say about Romeo is he has been on quite a few times, episode 116, but way before that, even Romeo was on the show even before the third chair started.
Yeah, he was one of our original sponsors.
One of our original sponsors, like second sponsor of the show, or maybe third.
Right when Battle Foam started.
And he was one of our first guests on the show. So with the three of us, including Raef, every once in a while we'd have a guest on and we'd interview them. And we interviewed Romeo like right after Battle Foam started, like within the first quarter of its launch. And it was a partnership really made in heaven. We love their products. Romeo seemed to genuinely like us and podcasting and supporting the concept of it in gaming. And so it really just kicked off, and we've been friends and partners ever since. And it's always fun to hang out with Romeo. He's such a great guy and great character. Brings such energy to any room he's in. And of course, he's love to have him on the show. And I know people have very passionate feelings about Romeo, but if you get to know him, he's just a really lovable guy. I mean, let's be honest, he's just a really great guy.
And this event that he's talking about was hilarious because I think Raef wasn't with us on that. I think he was off doing something else.
Yes.
So it was Russ and I in this little darkly lit bar at TempleCon, and Romeo, and it was funny because it really was a sort of Russ would come, well, what about this? And then Romeo would be like, well, what about this? And
he was just playing with it.
And Russ had something every time Romeo came up with something. Russ would be like, yeah, but what you don't I mean, it was the first time actually I've seen Russ's business face, which he doesn't show on the podcast, and he seldom shows gaming or anything else, but it's frightening actually. That was the first time I saw the future vice president.
It was a lot of fun, I think, and
in action.
And I think it was great to work with Romeo. And back then we used to, it was some of the earliest advertising on the show, and I really wanted to make the business model work. It's not that we ever thought we'd get wealthy on the D6 generation, but I knew as long as it was contributing a nice little chunk of change to Craig and I, we'd be much less likely for the show to end. Anytime, if we ever woke up and felt like the show was a lot of work and there wasn't any kind of compensation at all, we'd quit. And so I felt really passionately that if we could just get some little bit of money that, paid for things here and there and made it just a little more, more fun on those days we just don't really want to
pay for the things like Gen Con and TempleCon and travel.
And nowadays,
Adepticon.
We still have great sponsors nowadays. Of course, Patreon does the bulk of that, and it makes our lives a lot easier. But back in those days, the advertising was a big deal. And so, again, thanks to Romeo for having the faith and trust in us in those early days when the listenership was still rather low, and we weren't really sure if the show was going to get huge or not.
Yep. Well, we didn't think it was going to get huge.
No, we never really thought it was
at all.
huge. We thought it'd be small, but it got much bigger than I ever expected.
Yeah, and remember we had those eBay shout-outs. That's how.
We had all kinds of things which were dribbling in money here and there, but it's a lot of work, and now it's just much simpler. So that's great.
It's very, very much simpler.
Yeah.
And of course, along the way, we've picked up a lot of podcasting friends. Some of whom have come and gone in podcasting. Others are going strong. Others are embarrassing us by doing 2 or 3 shows now.
I know.
And let's do we have a clip? Go to the clip. Clip E3.
Oh, Russ, E3.
That would be Menoth John.
Menoth John. Let me bring him up.
Hi, D6 Generation. This is John Menoth John Christensen. Long-time caller, first time... Shoot. Hi, D6 Generation.
D6 Generation.
This is God, John Menoth now I'm hearing it twice.
Long-time caller, first time...
Hi, D6 Generation. This is John Menoth John Christensen, and I am... Hi, long-time listener, first-time caller. This is John Menoth John Christensen, as heard on the Painting with Menoth John podcast, and I am just here to wish you guys a very happy 200th episode. You know, back when I was mowing my lawn back in Minnesota, I never thought that some brown-haired kid with gray hair and a beard who's old and paints would end up on a great show like the D6 Generation, and I want to thank you for that. I also want to thank you for the many hours of enjoyment that you've given us over the years, and on behalf of all the listeners, thank you. Being a podcaster is no joke. It's not easy, and it's a lot of work, and you guys have done it better than just about anybody else, except possibly me. Hope you guys have another 200 episodes, and we'll see you next time. Hey, Ron!
Hey, John, that was excellent. I love the humor in there, John. I really appreciate the...
he's showing off his technical abilities.
He's having a little fun there. And nice job, John. And John is one of those people who, I think one of the things that has been really, really flattering, Craig, is the number of other podcasts that have started. And podcasting's still a very small community. And when we first started out, what I remember the most about first starting a podcast was how much other podcasts at that time, like... Podhammer and other shows, Jeff down in Australia and other and early 40K radio and other podcasts reached out and helped us when we were starting. And they said, hey, you're another minute sheet. And it was never really, there's friendly competition, but it was never competitive. It was always about reaching out. And since then, many, many more podcasts have sprung up, and we don't really look at it like, oh no, there's too many. I think it's just great. And a lot of these folks out there have written us and said, thank you so much. My show wouldn't exist without, hurting your guys first. And it's so flattering because, I have the same story with the Dice Tower. I used to be a huge fan of the Dice Tower. I still am a huge fan of the Dice Tower. And they really inspired me to try this crazy thing out. And I think it's great that we were inspiring others, and it's sort of contagious. And Menoth John's a great example of this, where he has a fantastic concept with his painting every Sunday night on his video cast, and his relationship's getting huge, and he's got a convention going on now and all crazy stuff. And it's like, wow, the student is now the master. And I'm just really impressed by these podcasts that have just become huge. And they started listening to us, and it's just very flattering and humbling.
It's weird.
It's really nice. It is weird a little bit too. But thank you, John, for the contributions. Thank you, of course, for participating in the third chair. That was an excellent episode. And of course, we'd love to have you on again in the not too.
Yeah, and Russ has been on his show.
I have. Yeah, we did a lot of crossovers.
And I will hopefully be on his show in the new year. So it's nice to get out there too.
Yeah.
Mix it up.
Now, do we get any more paper emails here, Craig? Texts, if you will.
Well, we did, and some of them were longer than others, and some of them were very, very short. But it's crazy. First of all, there are a couple people that didn't end up on the list at all. We should always remember that although he's never been a third chair, Matt Wilson has always been kind of a big deal with our show.
Yes.
Right. And sharing with him. And that's kind of one of the awesome things, one of the many awesome things about doing this show and where it's gone and what it's become is these people that we've been able to meet and build our relationships with. And so Matt Wilson, sadly, I didn't have his email. I'm the only one who didn't have his email. So I'm sure he would have been very nice and sent something very flattering and nice.
Here's the thing about Matt that I think is always amazing is how approachable he is, right? So he's...
Oh, absolutely. It's weird. It's to the point where, remember those people would walk up to us and not know who we were like one guy walked up to us, tapped Matt Wilson on the shoulder and said, do you know who these guys are?
Well, the best part was like someone walked up and asked Matt to take the picture of me standing with him. Right. And Matt's like, okay. It was just like,
this is Matt Wilson, the guy who started War Machine, Hordes, Privateer Press.
So what's great about Matt, though, which I love about him, is like we are so like, I don't know how else to say this. We are completely and totally unprofessional. I mean, I would walk up like
it's
other
sad.
Podcasts, right? That again, start Wayland House. They have all these booths and studios. I walk up to Matt at I email Matt like 3 days before Gen Con. And I'm like, Matt, hey, going to be down there again. Love to chat with you. Just catch up what's going on. He's like, cool, that'd be great. What times work for you? We pick a time. I walk by the Privateer Breath booth. You want to talk? And we walk down, and we're like sitting on the floor in the hall, right? Hoping the people walking by aren't making too much noise recording this stuff. It's just super casual. And we've recorded episodes with him, like walking down the street, from one building to another on the streets of Indianapolis because we didn't know where to go. We're just chatting with him because we only had an hour and we were trying to get it done really quick. So we're literally walking. We've been in, the piano bar at one of the hotels and the piano starts playing. We're like, oh God, you can hear the piano now. And it was just so
that one year we had to walk around the block and an ambulance went by.
So many of the crazy moments with Matt, and he's still, and now it's almost like a shtick. So now it's almost like we have to do it that way.
Where can we find what's the wackiest place we can find?
But it's been so much fun. And again, I'm always amazed, at this level with Matt. I mean, the size of Privateer Press now and what he does. I mean, the fact that he still even comes to Gen Con. And if you go by his booth, like Matt Wilson, he's not like in his suite somewhere on the 16th floor just hanging out. He's down there moving boxes, running around, working the booth, chatting with gamers, working the register. He's out there doing all the stuff that has to get done for a company like that to execute, which always blows me away. And then he's finding time for podcasts like us, and we're not he makes himself available to pretty much anybody who asks him, which is just really nice. Which is such a down to earth guy, and again, it's great to just get to know these people in the industry and really understand that they're just passionate about games like everybody else. It's really been my biggest impression about being involved with all this.
Exactly. And the lead up to that is, of course, another guy who runs a big game company that's been really crazy available to us to the point that he stays up till 3 or 4 in the morning to talk to us would be Neil Fawcett from Spartan Games.
Yeah. So Neil's hilarious. First of all, Neil's hilarious. And I always feel bad because whenever we have someone on from overseas, over across the pond, as we like to say in England, they're, 6 hours ahead. So for them, it's like, 3 in the morning. We record usually around 8 at night. So for them, it's like 2, 3 in the morning sometimes. And these guys will do it, which blows me away because I'm like, there's been times when we adjust our schedule. Of course, we try to. And sometimes we can do it on a Saturday morning, our time, Saturday afternoon, their time. But a lot of times it just don't work out for them either. They'd rather spend their weekend with their family too. So they go for it on these late night things. And the fact that, the head of Spartan Games out there is up at 3 in the morning just to show up on our podcast. And Neil is a hilarious person. And so for the audio to be a little scratchy, not to be able to hear Neil well, it really is. I feel so bad because Neil is such a funny person.
Well, that was
guy,
once,
great to talk to.
really.
Yeah, right.
He's been good ever since. That's that true. One. That first one was pretty painful to listen to.
Yeah, we had one that was really bad.
And it's been neat, first of all, to work briefly for Spartan Games and do some writing for them, and that was super enjoyable. But it's been neat watching them grow and get these cool deals like Halo, and now they're actually flying over to Gen Con, and we can meet face to face and we talk face to face, and it's awesome. The problem though is he's a very hands-on guy, so getting in touch with Neil is nearly impossible, and it usually takes 3 or 4 days to get an email back and forth. At which point he will give you the shirt off his back. It's just almost impossible to get in touch with him until then. So it was insane that we got any response at all in this 2-day window. And he was the 3rd or 4th person to respond. So in just a couple hours, he responded. He responded with, "If you want me, you can have me.
Yeah, exactly.
Just let me know how I can assist in your giant mega event. All the best, Neil." Sadly, that was the last we heard from
I know,
him.
right?
But Neil is an integral part of my history for sure, and the show itself.
Of course, and I'm sure he's super busy now with the Halo stuff and everything else going on. I mean, oh my God, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's
incredible.
crazy.
Yep.
So back to the tape.
Now This one's special, right? It's got to be. You always remember your first, right? That's what they say.
That's what they say.
I don't. I was wasted. But anyway, just kidding.
Wow.
Ross Watson.
This current political climate, Craig, you really got to start watching those.
Yeah, I've got to stop.
You really do. It's going to get you in trouble.
I know it's ridiculously. I apologize.
You're walking the line, my friend. Walking the line.
I am. I'm pushing the limits.
Yeah.
Ross Watson.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not forget Ross Watson, who was the first ever third chair.
Right.
And was on the show before he was another one who was on the third chair before the third chair existed.
Right.
Worked for Fantasy Flight. Now he's all over the place. He's doing all kinds of cool stuff. And Ross has been one of the staples of the D6 generation since we first started having guests on. And of course, Ross was the number one person who responded. He was the first response, audio response, any kind of response, and he sent us this clip.
Yes, let's go to the clip.
Hi everybody, this is Ross Watson. I've had the honor of being the guest in the third chair many times on the D6 Generation podcast, and I have been honored every single time. Craig and Russ are fantastic guys to be on a show with. I'm going to share one quick thing. My technique for the rapid fire segment is to just clear my mind and say the first thing that pops into my brain whenever that question comes up from Mick Nerdigan. So thanks again, and you guys keep listening to the D6 Generation Dice RR Vice.
Nice one, Ross. I'm glad he brought back the Dice RR Vice slogan, a classic. And I love his technique for rapid fire. You can just shout out what comes into your head. Try to clear your mind. Just let it go. And having been on rapid fire as long as Ross has, that's probably good advice. That's how I work it.
The Zen method is really the only way to go.
So thanks, Ross. It's been, we're here, obviously huge fans of your work, Ross, and it's nice to know that you're such a passionate supporter of the show as well. And thank you for all your contribution. Ross is always there for us. If we need a third chair, great memories of playing role-playing games with Ross at Gen Con, and really, it's turned into a friendship thanks to the show, which is great. And that's really the best part of the show, is making friends with our third chairs and our listeners throughout the time. And we now have a group of friends that, I look forward to these conventions. I like to see the conventions and the games, of course, but I'm really there to see our listeners again, who are now, and our contributors and our third chairs, who are now more than that. They're now our friends, which is really the best part of doing this whole thing. So, Craig, did anyone else email us here? Any more
yes.
thoughts?
Well, the next email we have is from Jasper Orthies. You might remember him from Wargames, Soldiers, and Strategy.
Oh, yes, Jasper.
Who was a sponsor of the show for quite a while there in the middle.
Yeah.
And Jasper sent this email. Hi, guys. I'm going to butcher so much. Anyway.
Sorry, you got this. You got this.
Congratulations on reaching that milestone. Very impressive. I'm prepping for the Frankfurt Buchmesse.
Yeah, there you go.
That even close?
That sounds right.
And I probably won't manage to record something, so I'd better respond now with all that verbal arm twisting. Who could refuse? Honestly, if you could have read the email I sent, you would have been ashamed to have
It was
known
pandering, and I loved it.
Who could forget that recording, though? It may have been your most boring episode, but I vividly remember going to the Buchmesse. I think we recorded it almost exactly 4 years ago. 3 hours in the train back and forth, talking all day to book people, falling asleep, dead tired with the alarm to 2 a.m. to go sit at a computer and talk to some gaming nerds 4,000 miles away. This is getting harsh.
It's awesome. I love it.
It confused the dog mightily, too. Come to think of it, I don't remember much of what we discussed, though, except for utterly failing rapid fire, having declared that I have a great interest in the American Revolution. Still do. That embarrassing situation haunts me still. Well, that's good. It's nice to be remembered.
It's good, yes.
All good fun, though, and I'd be happy to do it again if you'll have me. Maybe discuss the results of our third edition of the Great Wargaming Survey. And, of course, Wargame Soldiers and Strategy does that online survey that they do a lot now, where they're trying to collate as much information about wargaming and the wargaming community globally as they possibly can.
Ooh, thanks,
so that would be cool. We should do that.
Definitely take you up on that, Jasper. And thanks. That was actually a great episode. And we do appreciate Jasper's dedication to the show. They were a sponsor for a long time, and I love the magazine.
We saw them launching into the United States for the first time.
Good times. So loving it. And Jasper, you were a great guest. It was definitely not a boring episode. So that was
it was
excellent.
not. And I apologize if I embarrassed you so much that you lose sleep now at rapid fire. No one should take rapid fire that seriously.
Now, another person who's been a stalwart contributor to the show, Craig.
Stalwart doesn't even begin to cover it.
And that would be, of course, Jeff Engelstein. I mean, Jeff has been pretty close. What's funny about Jeff is that Jeff, to me, is kind of in the realm of, Tom Vassell and Eric Summerer, where they are on a podcast I used to listen to before I did a podcast. And so to me, these are all those guys that they're like, wow, they're pioneers doing all this cool stuff. I really enjoy the Dice Tower. And of course, Jeff's a regular contributor to the Dice Tower for more time than I'm sure he cares to remember. But what was great about Jeff, well, and Tom and Eric too, but Jeff in particular was really, really approachable. And actually, he started seeking us out at conventions and saying hello and letting us know he liked our show. And before you knew it, Jeff was getting engaged and involved in the show and reaching out to us, and hey, we're designing our first game, would you want to come try and play it? And we got to play, Space Cadets when it was basically a glimmer in Jeff and his kids' eyes. Many wonderful moments. And Jeff came to New Hampshire and let us know he was coming, and we met his family for a great breakfast place here in New Hampshire. And our kids were young, and his kids were much younger then. It was a great time. It's good to meet him and his wife and his lovely kids. It's just been another one of those things where been able to just our passion for gaming has led us to find each other and become great friends. And so I'm really interested to see what Jeff left us here for a message. Let's find out.
Hey, this is Jeff Engelstein calling in to wish a hearty congratulations to the D6 Generation crew on 200 episodes. Well earned. As much as I enjoyed my time appearing on the podcast in the third chair, I think probably my favorite memory of hanging with you guys was at the Gen Cons when me and my kids were involved in helping you set up the play-by-mob events, which we did a couple of times, culminating in the now legendary, at least for us, Stephen Hawking moment in the, I guess that was 3 years ago, I don't remember. But anyway, congratulations to all of you, and we really look forward to 200 more.
That was awesome. And yes, so Jeff's referencing, of course, the fact that after he started creating games and we started doing the, about third or fourth trip to Gen Con, Craig, right? We started running the play-by-mobs. And the first few
not even that. It was like the second.
Right. And the first few we did, but then there was one year where Jeff had just launched one of his games, and Jeff's like, hey, I'm happy to help. I'm like, Jeff, you want to try to design the game? Because it'd be kind of like an Engelstein design play-by-mob. Yeah. And so they did. I think they did that for 2 or 3 years, and it did culminate, as Jeff mentioned, in the now legendary Stephen Hawking moment. That was the sort of the random game there that kind of led to that situation. So always great fun.
How many Hail Marys that took to wash out of my soul.
It was awesome. So Jeff, Brian, and Sydney, always great to hang out with all of you. And Jeff, thank you so much. And to his daughter, Sydney, for being in the third chair. Fantastic stuff.
Oh, she's coming up.
Oh, right. Don't let me jump the gun.
Yeah, come on.
All right. So who's next, Craig, on the email?
Who's next? Well, we've got a couple short ones. All right. Very recently, of course, Mike Tunez. You guys will remember the pirate guy that came on with Blood and Plunder, the pirate minis game, and then I got to play it at Gen Con, and they gave us a whole bunch of guys after we pledged on the Kickstarter. So I'm in the Kickstarter up to my neck anyway, but then they gave us a bunch of cool stuff so we can test it out and play it here. Painted it all up very quickly. Beautiful models. And Mike is himself neck deep in the Kickstarter right now. So he sent just a short little blurb. He said, loved being on the show. It was fun being able to share information about Blood and Plunder, which is coming along nicely.
Excellent.
And then the one thing that everybody's going to remember, it was even more fun to be able to dispel some pirate myths during the Lost Chapters segment.
That was my favorite. That was my favorite part, was that Mike was going in.
That man crushed so many of my childhood visions.
Many pirate visions have been destroyed thanks to Mike, so we appreciate that, I think.
I can't even watch a pirate movie the same way.
I know. It totally ruins Errol Flynn for me.
What is that guy doing with boots on? Seriously.
Right. That was awesome. Well, thank you, Mike. And again, thank you for jumping. We can't wait to see Blood and Plunder. We've seen the early stuff. We saw it at Gen Con this year, some of the early works, and man, that looks like a lot of fun. I can't wait till that thing hits the streets.
Yep. And I mean, this is as good a time as any to talk a little bit about how Kickstarter has changed the podcast. Because if you think Kickstarter didn't exist when we started the podcast, and then for a couple years it was like, what's this Kickstarter thing? It's kind of weird. And I think Raef even said Kickstarter was going to die as one of his predictions at one point, or it might have been me.
Yeah, that was wrong.
Yeah. That was. Oh, then I think he said it was going to die. I said it was going to die off or slow down. Neither of those things was the case.
No.
And now it's a part of the landscape.
Right.
And if you look at, I mean, we have to consciously make an effort not to have every third chair come from a Kickstarter.
Yes, it is it's very easy because so many games now, even for major companies, go through the Kickstarter process now. So
exactly. We didn't have much of a problem for a little while, and then all of a sudden, even established gaming companies and designers were doing Kickstarters, and so it became something that was omnipresent in the industry, and something that's been fascinating to watch, and luckily haven't really been tagged by any of the bad situations that have been out there. And the guys that we brought on, although we did have that curse that lingered for a little while there, that'll be addressed, I imagine, somewhere down the line here amongst our clips.
Right.
But Mike is definitely one of that new vanguard of game designers, these Kickstarter guys, these Kickstarter champions that are new to the landscape.
Exactly. Hey, speaking of established companies, I mentioned a couple there. We did get another nice email.
Is he really that established?
Well, Fantasy Flight Games is pretty established.
Oh, fantasy. Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah.
So Tim Huckleberry was one of my between him and Ross and Sam, the three of my earliest bosses at Fantasy Flight with the various different projects that I worked on. And Tim was able to just give us a quick shout out. It was a blast to be on the show, and here's looking for 200 more. So thank you, Tim, for taking the time. And it was awesome having you on the show. I think you came on the show with Sam, if my memory serves.
Yes, he did.
And
back in episode 122.
122.
March
there you go.
2013. That's when that happened.
Who's Johnny on the spot with the dates and times?
Well, got to do something.
So Fantasy Flight, of course. Fantasy Flight was one of the first big game companies to take us seriously. Yeah,
exactly. And what also was really neat about this is, as longtime listeners will know, Craig and I are huge old school Games Workshop fans. Yeah. And as also many people know, many of the folks involved with Games Workshop have now spread their wings and spread themselves out throughout the gaming industry. And Tim Huckleberry is one of those folks. And to have someone like that who informed so many, things that I loved about Games Workshop now at Fantasy Flight, and getting to talk to him on the show was another one of those moments. And we've had other, obviously, big folks as well, like Priestley and stuff on the show. Well, that's not really fair, but you know what I mean.
But I get like Rick. But when you put up Rick Priestley and you're talking about 40K,
there's so many little things. There's so many people that make Games Workshop work and really made Games Workshop what it was in the 90s and early 2000s. And Tim was one of those people, right? He was like one of those people that's made it work. And to be able to talk to him and sync up with him and get to know him a little better was really a special time. So it's great, again, to be able to touch base with the people who inspire the games you love has just been a wonderful part of the podcast. And so thank you, Tim, for participating as well as getting back to us. Really, really appreciate that.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, now I got to go back to the audio here, and we do have one from some guy
from
Joyzy, as I understand it here.
Oh, is he?
Let's hear.
What is he in waste management?
I don't know. Let's hear from this guy here. See what he has to say.
What have I ever done to be treated so disrespectfully? If you had come to me in friendship, I would have appeared in person on the 200th episode. Hey guys, Stephen Bonacore, president of Stronghold Games, aka the Podfather. Congratulations on the 200th episode. Really great achievement. 200 absurdly long, overly verbose, self-aggrandizing episodes. Sure. So that's like, wow, 800 hours of gamer nonsense. And that doesn't even count the lost episodes. So one of my favorite memories, favorite times with you guys, it's got to be the annual predictions episode. I think that's just awesome. Using that system that you use to score, the system that only a min-maxing gamer could possibly come up with. It's got more rules than like Advanced Squad Leader. -2 for this, +3. I have no idea what you guys are talking about, but I have a great time listening to it. Also the first time that we met face to face, it's at Gen Con 2011, 2012, Geek Nation Tours Dinner. You remember that?
I do.
I looked at the two of you and I said, "Who are you?" No, and then I heard Craig's nasally voice and Russ's large-headed, reverberating voice, and I knew it was my two favorite podcasters. So congratulations again on your 200th episode. Really excellent job you guys have done. Great for the industry. Great for gamers. And I leave you with this. Someday, and that day may never come, I'll call upon you to do a service for me. But until that day, accept my appearance here as a gift on your 200th podcast. Guys, take it easy. Always great.
That was awesome, Steven. Of course, that was... now, I just want to point out to Tom and Eric that he did just say that we are his two favorite podcasters. I just want to throw that out there.
And you know, that's been known for a long time, but it's nice to have the confirmation.
It's nice to have it confirmed. Now, one of the inside jokes here that Steven kind of saying, what did I ever do to you? When we were scheduling episodes out, this is actually all on me. I wasn't really counting the episodes as carefully as I should have been. And 200 just seems so far away. Just like, wait a minute, we're doing 199. It seemed like, so I was, as we do book our guests out, you know, a couple months out. And so I had booked Steven for 200. And then we realized that we really didn't want to have a third chair on by
Yeah, because we don't actually write the episode number when we book. We write the dates.
We just do the dates. So they're like, oh, crap. We wanted to do an episode without sort of a third chair because we wanted to pay tribute to all the third chairs equally and for 200. And then I realized Steve was, so Steven, can we bump you out? And I was honest. I said, because we accidentally scheduled you for 200. And he's like, what, I'm not good enough for 200 for you? So he got all, offended, which I thought was pretty hilarious. So thank you, Steven. Thank you for all the great games from Stronghold Games. Thank you for always, being there for us. And Steven, really, Stronghold always sends games for us to give away at any event or charity or anything we do. Whenever we do anything, and it could be at the last freaking minute. It'll be like, oh, something fell through and we don't have anybody, and we reach out to Steven. Steven, can you do anything? And he's like, boom, he sends like a crate. Just a really great guy, always been there for us in a whole variety of ways. And so, Steven, thank you for everything you do for the gaming industry, making all those great games, and for doing the podcasting circuit. I know all the podcasts appreciate it, and we certainly appreciate the time you can give us. And he was getting ready to come on our show here this Wednesday, right after literally the day he flew back from Essen and jet lagged and everything else. So he's always willing to go the extra mile to make sure he's there for all of us various podcasters. So we really appreciate that.
No, Steven's support is enough to make you wonder if he's talking to the wrong person. Because when he sends us stuff, and he sends, half of our prize vault is Stronghold games. And it's just he is so supportive, and he's so out there, and he's so energetic, and he brings that energy to everything that he does. And you're just like, we're just two little guys up here in New Hampshire, right? But it's awesome having him on the show. It's awesome having him in the big, wider D6G family, and we certainly hope to have him on for many episodes to come.
Indeed. All right. So what about another email here, Craig?
Well, going back to another email, Russ, we go back to another Kickstarter.
Yeah.
And again, this is another relatively recent third chair. Jeff Syedek, you'd remember from Guerrilla Games, was on talking about battle stations.
Yeah, right. Exactly right. And that was a great episode, great game. And Jeff sent us a little email here directly from his trip just as he got back from Essen. He was kind enough to take time out of his busy schedule, as it were, to let us know. Right. And he said, I'm just back from Essen, and I can't muster the technological literacy necessary to do a bit of audio, but I am tickled that I made it into the first 200 episodes and hope to make an appearance in the next 200. Here's a bit of an update on the Battle Stations project I was flogging, obviously getting going there. We ended up raising about $250,000, including the pledge manager, and I have gone on from struggling to make a go of working hard on it to make it happen for January shipping. So looking forward to getting my copy, and I'm sure a lot of other folks are as well. So thank you, Jeff, for that feedback. Again, it's always great to have designers on the show and hear about all their hard work. And again, thanks for taking time out. I mean, right now it's a super busy time of year, so we really appreciate folks.
It's crazy.
Are finding
and
moments.
The D6 generation is a crossroads for all of these gaming industry personalities.
Yeah. Speaking of personalities.
We got
a little audio here from a gentleman named Dan Yarrington. Let's listen here. Here we go.
Howdy, D6 Generation. Dan Yarrington here. It's simply been a delight to watch the D6 Generation grow locally from the early days and around the world with an ever-expanding audience. From the first days when we were playing episodes of the show in our retail shop to appearing as a third chair guest on the show many times over the years, the conversations have always been enjoyable and invigorating. I particularly enjoyed playing Legends of the American Frontier together and then recording our review to share with all of the stalwart listeners. Congratulations on 200 episodes, D6G. Here's to the next 200.
Oh, thank you so much, Dan. I love Dan's language style. It's been a delight, Craig.
Yeah.
But what's been great about Dan's been so supportive from the very beginning. I mean, we started our show. Dan was running one gaming store in Salem, New Hampshire.
Yep.
And, of course, Dan has grown that into, Game Salute and all the other things that he does now. And he's got multiple stores, all kinds of craziness going on. And what was great about Dan was that even in the early days, he just really embraced this idea of podcasting and was like, could I play segments of your show in my store to promote these games? And he would play episodes of ours in the store and put the games we were talking about right in the front of the store. So people were like, hey, they're talking about Tomb today. There's Tomb if you're interested in it. And it would be funny because we go into these employees and be like, talk to them. And people would be like, oh my God, you're the guy on the tape.
Exactly.
Because the employees would hear us.
It was really our first taste of the micro celebrity that we would experience later on.
But I don't think they were fans as much as, oh God, I listened to you drone on.
No, that's what. No, not fans, but being recognized by your voice.
Right. So,
it was odd walking into a store and hearing your own voice too.
Right. And of course, Dan was Myriad and the Game Salute were one of our early sponsors as well. So thank you for all the support, Dan, and thank you for making yourself accessible. Really appreciate it, and thanks for the fun little bite there. Really, really appreciate that as well. Now here's the good one, Craig. Why don't you go ahead and read this next one we got from email?
Okay, well, one of our most popular third chairs was Chris Weave, who, of course, I met at HonorCon a few years ago, the David Weber convention. And he came on with his encyclopedic, dare I say, the only person ever to correct me during rapid fire, knowledge of naval history and of course, through his work with David Weber, extending that into speculative fiction, science fiction, and how naval doctrine might translate into that. And the depth of knowledge, the personality he brought to it, the humor that he brought to it made him one of the most popular third chairs that we've had. And we've been trying to get him back on the show. There just aren't that many naval games. So eventually we're just going to have to suck it up and have him on a show that doesn't 100% use him to the best of his abilities. But he is super, super busy, of course. He did send us this blurb. Congratulations on your 200th episode. Dunkin' Donuts must be really sick of you guys.
They are, Chris.
They are. We got kicked out of the local one.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed being on the show. Since then, I have continued to work with David Weber and Bu9. That's the David Weber fan-based organization. We're currently working on House of Lies, the second Honorverse companion. I've also been attending lots of science fiction conventions, giving presentations, such as What the U.S. Navy Taught Me About Starfleet,
That's an awesome
Naval
topic.
Command and Control, and aircraft carriers in space.
Hey, wait a minute. Chris Weave's the one that told me we couldn't have aircraft carriers.
That's right. I was going to say that. I'm not playing as many games as I would like, but I just bought Zia or Jaya. That debate still rages.
Yeah.
And I'm about to buy Scythe, and they both look pretty interesting.
Good choices,
Keep up
Chris.
the good work, and I look forward to the next 200 episodes, and thanks for including me in the big shoe.
Well, thanks,
Chris Weave.
Chris, awesome guest, and that was one of my favorite conversations when we talked about the realism in sci-fi, in space battles, because to talk with a naval expert like that, someone who's really actually logistically thought about how this might work.
Crazy
was
knowledgeable.
So much fun and such a great opportunity, and one of those things you just never expect the show to provide. So that was an awesome experience.
Yeah, and as Russ noted, his whole thing was you wouldn't have aircraft carriers in space.
Right.
So,
yes,
if he's doing some sort of presentation called Aircraft Carriers in Space, it's either false advertising or maybe he's come around to your way of thinking, Russ.
As my daughters would say, I feel lied to. Anyway, moving on.
That probably says more about your parenting skills than anything Chris Weave might have said.
Possibly. All right. Now, this gentleman was just recently on the show, and here he is again. Let's hear from him.
I never get enough of this voice.
Happy Uterus Independence Day! What? Wait, no, that's for birthdays.
That's not right.
Congratulations! The secret to a happy marriage is to... hang on, that's not right either. Let's go with... Hey guys, it's Luke from Channel Endgame here. Just wanted to wish you both, as well as Total Fangirl and, of course, Raef Hollywood Granger, a very happy 200th episode of the D6 Generation. It's been an incredible milestone, and without stretching the math muscle too much, I think that you've moved square out of the boatload territory right into the realms of a metric crap ton of gamer nonsense. So kudos from our own team, and here's to 100 more. I'd get them done before your lungs give out, boys. Enjoy.
I like their music. So Luke, thank you so much. That's Luke Italic, of course, and Endgame Radio, formerly of World's End Radio. That's kind of winding down from now. Luke, been on the show several times, and again, showing off some of his mad podcasting skills there. Great audio tricks there, Luke. Nicely done, sir. And again, thanks for... And Luke, again, super accommodating, right? So again, when we talk to people on the other side of the world, literally, Luke is in Australia. And so when we're recording here at like 8 o'clock at night, it's the next day, literally, there in the morning. And Luke finds time out of his busy schedule to be available for us on our time. So that's really, really kind.
He actually rearranges his whole life schedule to do it.
He does. So really, really nice. And again, it's so much fun to get these international connections from.
I like to say global.
Yeah, right.
It's a global community.
It is a global community. Craig, here's a great email from another great podcast. Cody Jones from Game On, formerly of Game On with Cody and John.
Why don't you read Cody's email?
I sure
Russ?
will. Cody and John are two, I would say, friends we've made now, thanks to the show. And Cody was kind enough to respond here, and he says, "You guys have never been Jones theoried out of my podcast feed." That's nice to hear. Fond memories and best wishes from the gaming capital of the world. Here's to 200 more. Well, thank you, Cody. He and John now have sort of retired from gaming micro celebrity, but they're still hardcore gamers out there in Indianapolis. And whenever down in that region, we bump into them at Gen Con. I see Cody usually doing the math trade, and it's always nice to say hello and see him and his lovely family, and just a pure perfect gentleman and another great friend we've made thanks to this show. So thank you, Cody, for that. Really nice to have you on.
Absolutely. And it's nice to know that we'll never be Jones theoried out.
That is very nice. Now, speaking of friends we've made on the show, here's another one, Craig. We got a little email, a little voice, actually, audio from our friend Norbert over there in the UK.
Sounds good.
Taking a minute to queue up here. Here we go. Come on, Norbert.
Hello, this is Norbert Brunhuber calling from London. Been on the show a few times to talk about War Machine predominantly, and had a few thoughts on your 200th episode. I always felt that the D6 Generation was the podcast that grew up alongside the golden age of gaming. You guys picked up podcasting when it was still the wild, wild west of media, and harnessed it to communicate to all the burgeoning gamers out there around the country and soon around the world. And you created a format that is often imitated still today when new podcasts come on the scene. And to note that yours has remained substantially the same since the show's inception is testament to its inherent soundness and your dedication to it. And yet somehow, your show feels as fresh as when it started, which is an amazing achievement in design and execution. But most of all, I feel privileged to have gotten to know you, even if just virtually, and have followed you through your lives as you've grown and developed families and lived through highs and lows. I look forward to each show to get another chance to catch up with what you've been doing and what's been happening. It always bums me out just a little when I hear Craig's final segment's theme music, as the notes signal that little bit of melancholy I feel as our time together is drawing to an end. So congratulations on your 200th episode. Thanks for sticking with it, and thanks for being part of our community. Take care, guys.
I gotta dry my eyes here, Craig. That was really touching, Norbert.
It was very nice.
Clearly, that was very very well thought out and well written. Norbert, thank you so much. And I think it's very kind of you to say that we were that so many that the format and everything about the show you really liked, and how touching it is that you think have that little sadness when you hear the theme music for Did You Ever Notice, knowing the episode's coming to an end.
I'm sad when I hear that music, but it's for a totally different reason.
And thank you, Norbert. And again, Norbert's a great example. So many great friends, Craig, we've made through the show, almost like pen pals. I think of people like Norbert and Owen Staten. It's very, very, very kind, and it's just these people welcome us into their home. And my family was out last summer in England, and Norbert made time for us to visit and say hello to his lovely wife, and really get to spend a little time with them. And it feels like I know people around the world now thanks to the show. And Norbert in particular, so we got to know him really well when he was over here and gaming regularly at TempleCon and with the Jersey SOBs, and that whole group made us really welcome. Norbert and everyone down there has always been very kind, and so it's just really I think the thing about the gaming community that's so awesome, Craig, is how welcoming and accepting they are of all these crazy ideas we try to do.
It is, and they are crazy.
They are. So let's see. What's up next here?
Well, up next is something that you almost spoiled about a half an hour ago. And that would be the note from Sydney Engelstein.
Oh, yes. Right.
Sydney writes, "Hi. Congrats on 200 episodes. I will not be able to record something, but I can give you a fond memory of my time in the third chair. Before the achievements and gaming section, you explained to me that after I said something, the achievement sound would play. I, being the attentive and clever guest I was, immediately and completely forgot what you had just told me. The section started, I said my piece, and the bubbling sound effect played, terrifying me. I screamed a little bit, jumped out of my seat, and panicking asked what that sound was. You guys, with a surprising level of patience, explained it again and started the section over. My dad was less patient and mocked me about it relentlessly. It was a fun time." That was a good. I didn't remember that we recorded it for her. That was uncommonly kind of us.
I'd forgotten about that too. Sydney, thank you so much. Sydney's been awesome in a bunch of ways. First of all, coming on the show and being on our third chair as the first female game designer in our third chair was awesome. It was also fantastic to get to talk to her. She's been great on the in our Gen Con events too, right? She's come in and she's done a great job of actually help run those events, and she just jumps right in. And I just always impressed by her level of engagement and her level to really just be involved in everything we do and be out there in front of the public so well, even when she was much younger. So it's been kind of fun to watch Sydney grow up, and now she's out there, doing all these great things in the industry, and it's just fantastic to see. So thank you, Sydney, for adding to our show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And she's such a great, bubbly, energetic guest to have as well.
Indeed. All right, well, we got another audio contribution here. I think you guys are going to recognize his voice, so let's give this a go here. Let's see what happens.
Hey, Russ and Craig. Eric Summerer here from the Dice Tower. And I have had the good fortune to be in the third chair twice. Unless there was a third time, I don't remember. I'm not sure. But both times, I can remember one distinct feeling, and that was utter terror at the lightning round. I did not know what Craig was going to say. I really didn't know what I would say in response. It was, in fact, terrifying and something that, it takes me a little while to recover from between visits, which is why I haven't agreed to come on that frequently. So in all honesty, though, it's a terrific accomplishment to reach 200 episodes, and I want to say thank you for letting me be a small part of that, and I wish you all the best on continuing such a wonderful run. Thanks and congratulations.
Well, thank you, Eric. And Eric is not the first.
I'm starting to sense a theme, and I'm feeling bad.
Eric is not the first person to say that rapid fire scares the bejesus out of them.
Yeah, I don't know.
On the show, some folks really scared of it. Other folks come in ready, like it's their favorite part of the show, and they can't wait to be in rapid fire. So it's kind of funny how rapid fire has become this sort of thing. I remember when Craig and I were first talking about the format of the podcast, and we talked about this idea of rapid fire based on the McLaughlin group, and how many people, and how we were like, I don't know, is it going to work? And Craig was talking about, geez, it's going to be a lot of work to research it and really get it in there. And initially, we had to actually put a disclaimer in the front of the show for the first few episodes, because early iTunes reviews would say things like, we love your show, but whatever that crazy yelling is in the beginning, get it out of there. I turn it off in the first 30 seconds. Yeah. And then I'd read another review that said the show was good after the first 5 minutes. So there were actually early disclaimers that said, it's a little crazy, but wait 5 minutes, right? Or even how do you think it said, fast forward 5 minutes if you can't handle craziness or something like that.
And we had multiple people contacting us saying they didn't like our show because it was all screamy and character voices.
And we're like, no, that's just the first 5 minutes. Just give it 5.
Clearly they weren't going past the first 5 minutes.
It took a long time, but now it's become sort of obviously a signature of the show. And now a lot of people say it's their favorite part of the show.
Is it, though? Is it?
It is. Actually, a lot of people talk about that.
Okay.
Tom Bassel teases me all the time and says he only listens to the first 5 minutes and turns the show off.
Yeah, but Tom, the man swims through sarcasm like a fish through water.
It's true. It's hard to swims through sarcasm. I feel like next time he's on the show, you got to put that in rapid fire.
Yeah,
all right, so
he's not going to hear it here because he only listened to the first 5 minutes.
So we got a few more audio, but we got one more email there from a great listener and third chair. That's our good friend Dean Gilbert. Craig, why don't you go ahead and read that?
Well, Dean's been a listener for a long, long time, and of course. Listeners will know that Dean was the guy who helped us with our big Patreon game a couple years in a row at Gen Con by game mastering some awesome role-playing games that he kind of knocked together so that they would follow along with our interests, whether it was the Firefly one the first year or my personal favorite, the Guardians of the Galaxy the second year.
Yeah.
So he sent us a long little blurb, and let me read what Dean has to say. I totally suck at reading stuff aloud, so I'm going to write this and let you do that work for me.
Nice, Dean.
Thank you, Dean. Congratulations to Russ, Craig, Rafe, and Nicole on reaching 200 episodes. I've been on board as a fan since way back in episode 31 with your review on Small World, which is still one of my favorite board games, and you're still one of the 3 podcasts I listen to regularly. So by my count, that's counting on fingers, roughly 28 days worth of podcasts that I've listened to.
Oh, my God.
That's a lot. And it's all been great, if you say so. If you would have told me back in 2009 that 7 years later, not only would I have played RPGs with you twice, but also have the honor of sitting in the third chair, though the third chair didn't exist then, I would have laughed. Playing Firefly and Guardians of the Galaxy with you were the highlights of my last 2 Gen Cons. My 8-year-old son got a kick out of hearing his dad's voice while listening to the podcast on the way to and from school.
That's awesome.
Updates on me. I'm embarrassed to say that I still haven't played Tiny Epic Galaxies.
What? Come on, Dane.
Even though one of my friends have it, but we've been having too much fun playing Imperial Assault, Sentinels of the Multiverse, and D&D 5th Edition, and we really can't fault him with any of that.
No, we can't.
Work continues on Torg Eternity, and the plan is to launch the Kickstarter for that early in 2017. So again, congrats on hitting the big 200, and I hope to see you again at Gen Con 2017. P.S. #review pandemic. Yeah, there you go.
We'll see. Maybe by episode 400, you never
can tell.
Never say never, right, Dean?
Could be next episode.
Dean,
could be episode 401.
Those are some of the best role-playing I've ever done, Dean. Fantastic times. And thank you again for your awesome contributions to the show. Good stuff. Now, Kurt, we got more audio here. We got one from our friend over at Mantic there, Mantic Pat, as it were.
Yep.
Let's go ahead and listen to his.
3, 2, 1. Hey, everybody. It's Community Pat from Mantic Games. Just like to give a great congratulations to Russ and Craig on their 200th episode of the D6 Generation podcast. I was lucky enough to be on the podcast about 2 years ago, where we talked about Dead Zone, the first edition. Since then, now we're in version 2. We're in version 2 of Kings of War. We've let out Dungeon Saga. We are coming out with Star Saga, a space dungeon crawler. Look very excited for that. Coming out in November, we have The Walking Dead All-Out War. It's a great miniature skirmish game based on the Walking Dead comic book. So check it out in your retail store coming in November. My favorite time I think I had when I was on the D6 generation was when we were just kind of hanging out in the Dunkin' Donuts, eating apple fritters and drinking coffee and talking the fluff of the Dead Zone universe, how that expands, how the stories behind it, the short stories that came out in Containment Protocols. So since that day, I've had the pleasure of seeing Craig and Russ at many cons and hanging out with them, especially at Adepticon. So looking forward to coming on again in the future sometime, hopefully. And again, I'd like to say congratulations to Craig and Russ on their 200th episode. A spectacular landmark. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Dean. That was awesome. And, I think nice job sneaking the plugs in there. Sorry,
very nice.
Pat.
Hey, I asked them to talk. Pat, come on.
Right? Yes, sorry, Pat.
I asked them to tell us what they were up to.
Yeah,
Little updates.
It's great.
Everybody loves.
You gotta know what's going on.
Into the tank, the Shark Tank update.
Yeah, right. What's going on? Right, exactly. So it's been great to hear from you, Pat. And again, great stuff there. It's awesome to. It's so great to get close to the folks in the industry. I think that's just really one of the best things about this. And I also want to echo his point about the Lost Chapters chatting. It's kind of funny. We try to. The show is actually not that regimented in general, but we definitely take the segments for the main show much more seriously than we take the Lost Chapters, which turns the Lost Chapters into very, very casual.
It's a different animal.
It's a different animal, and we talk about all kinds of crazy stuff. And I love it because we go in with usually a lot less, thought on the format exactly, just a very high-level topic and not a lot of bullets. And we just kind of ramble on for half an hour. And some of the most fun conversations just sort of grow organically out of that setting. And I really like that format. And it went from sort of a crazy idea as to give bonus content for those folks who are willing to help the show a little more to turning into a sort of a bonus segment that just doesn't attach to the main show. That's actually, in some cases, as good, if not better, than some of the main content.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Now we got all audio here next. So who should we do next here? I think we'd probably do Sam here, right?
Yeah.
Now Sam's got some interesting history with us too. But let's hear about his audio clip here.
Hey D6G guys, this is Sam Zitten sending you a happy 200th episode message. Bring you up to date. I finished my game table. It's pretty much complete and in the game room now.
Nice.
Still got to get the cup holders and the shelf in there, but it's pretty much set to play on. We've gotten some great games in. I wanted to bring you a little bit of a message. Right now, we're right in the middle of the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, a harvest festival. It's 8 days long. And one of the things we do during this holiday is we have a practice called the Daled Minim, or the 4 species, where we take 3 different kinds of tree branches and the citron fruit, the fruit of the citron tree, and we bring them together. And we learn that represents the different kinds of people all coming together to be successful, and that we all need everyone, no matter who you are, to come together to be successful. And really, I think that's what you guys have done as a show. You guys bring role players, board gamers, war gamers, across the spectrum together for the greater good of gaming. I've had opportunities because of your show to speak with a Swedish person about Blood Bowl. These are cool things that don't happen to everyone. So my absolute kudos, grats, best on 200 episodes, and we're looking forward to 200 more. Have a great one. Take care. This is Sam.
Well, thank you, Sam. I love when Sam shares those little moments, those stories from his culture, and compares them to his belief system.
It's like gaming. A little sermon,
and but also to what we do here. And I think it was really, that is something he mentions that I think is pretty unique to the show, and was sort of foundational to the show, and sort of carried. And we debated this quite a bit, and actually really worked hard at the beginning, which is the idea that we didn't want to become typecast as a single type of gaming show.
Right.
We didn't want to be a miniature gaming podcast. We didn't want to be a board gaming podcast. We didn't want to be an RPG podcast. We wanted to be a podcast about gaming in general. And
general gaming podcast.
Yeah, right. And in the very beginning, we actually, I don't know if you remember these conversations we'd have with Craig, with you and me and Raef, Craig, but we would discuss seriously like, well, Raef would be passionate about a certain topic, and I would be like, well, this is the 3rd time in a row we're talking about a miniature game. We got to take a break from miniature games and talk about a board game. Or this is our 3rd board game. It's time for an RPG, guys. Let's get them in the rotation. And we tried to make it so we didn't do back-to-back shows about the same kind of game. Now, we've relaxed that rule a little bit now that we're a little more known as a general gaming podcast. But I think that really helped establish us, and I think that also made us pretty unique because, a lot of the big podcasts now are very focused on a specific area of gaming, or in a lot of cases, especially in the miniature gaming world, they're focused on a specific miniature game. And there aren't a lot of even general miniature gaming podcasts. And so where do you go to hear about the new miniature games, and if they're worth a look a lot? And if you're a miniature gamer and there might be a board game that might appeal to you, where do you go for that? And so I think that's allowed us to keep our niche a little bit. And I think Sam does call that out. And I think the addition of the 3rd chair and these great people who are willing to come on the show is central to that because they bring an expertise. Because we're general, neither Craig nor I can be as expert as someone like a Norbert who only plays War Machine, or someone like a Sam who really tries to do gaming with, a great variety of group of people in a religious setting. And so to be able to have these experts come on the show and amplify, the little bit we know with their expertise is, I think, what makes a big part of the show work and the Third Chair work.
Absolutely.
So thank you, Sam, and thank you for all your great contributions and thoughtful contributions. Another great example of someone bumped into Gen Con, got to know him through Cody and John, and kind of always, Sam's had some friendly challenges with us. It's just been a great, just one of the most friendliest, nicest guys you'd ever meet. Just a really great guy.
And code names work great with my class. Yay!
Yes, indeed. Not surprised. Speaking of great guys, up next here is
one of the greatest.
Seppi. Let's hear from him.
Hey, this is Seppi with Fight in a Box. 200 episodes is an epic level of entertainment. We're pretty certain your endeavors will be archived and used as a template for future societies. Some sort of wacky dystopia where apes shave their heads to be more like Craig. But seriously, we can't thank you and Total Fangirl enough. Together, we overcame the D6 Generation Kickstarter curse, and now it looks like we're going to deliver our game months and months early. You have made a universe of difference for our tiny, tiny game company. So thanks. You folks are awesome, and we really look forward to the next 200 episodes, especially the ones after Russ gets that new, young, irreverent clone body.
What the? Where did that come from?
I was very glad to hear that part, because to be frank, the whole ear thing or the whole hair thing was a little hurtful.
Clone body, probably another 5 or 10 years, that'll sound really good.
Shaving apes?
Yeah. Well, any case, Seppi, awesome. What a great guy, and he got a great game there in Fight in a Box, and it's just been fun.
End of the line.
It's been fun to
Squirrel or Die.
Have him on the show, exactly. So Seppi, thank you so much.
Can't wait actually, we're both getting copies of that from the Kickstarter.
Oh yeah, I can't wait.
I went all in. All in. I don't even know what that means. I just remember that I went all in, and I can't wait. And how about a Kickstarter coming months early? They just did an update where their stuff is already on the boat. So can't wait for that. Not that whole human cannibalism thing. No game is complete without it.
Oh, exactly right. Now, a couple other third chairs we talked about as being early supporters of the show. And this next person here is another good example of someone who really got behind the show pretty early on in our advertising process and really enabled us to do Gen Con reliably every year. And really, I think, led a level of credence to the show that I don't think we would have otherwise had. So
class, a level of class.
Well, anytime Canadians are involved, class goes up by like 4 points, especially in this election year. So let's go ahead and listen to our favorite Canadian here. See what he has.
Hey, now we've got too many Canadians to make favorites.
Hello, guys. Terrace from Geek Nation Tours and the Freebooters Network here. Just wanted to say thank you to the ancient mariners of podcasting. As a fan, it was great to be a host, and I can't believe you even had me back for more Tim Hortons donuts. I must say, though, it is your kind, knowledgeable, and downright fun personalities that I remember the most. As always, it has been a pleasure indeed. I hope, though, that you both understand the huge contribution you make to the gaming community. Your amazing reviews and in-depth coverage of all things gaming and geeky have allowed many of us to better enjoy the awesome world of gaming that we live in. What you provide is both valuable and unique, and I can't wait to hear the next 200 shows.
Well, thank you, Terrace. That was very kind. That was very, very kind. So thank you so much, Terrace, and you're more than welcome back on the show all the time. And
of course.
Thank you for the great support from Geek Nation Tours. As Gen Con has grown bigger and scheduling with Gen Con has grown more complex, our relationship with Geek Nation Tours really makes it possible for us to be there. And as you've heard from so many of our other third chairs and so many other folks on the show, being able to go to Gen Con just sets us up, gets us to hang out with these freaks, people that we've gotten to know, and these friends we've made, and also enable us to make more connections and more friends. And so without that ability, so I would say Geek Nation Tours and Terrace are a foundational piece to this show's success and longevity. I don't think that's overstating it, Craig.
Oh no, without a doubt. And that clip really kind of captures Terrace too. Soft spoken, kind. Although get a couple drinks in him and he can be sort of vicious.
Yes,
but other than or super late at night at those like at the Adepticon board game night and things like that. Remember, were you with us, Russ, that one year where we played? What did we play? We played Hex.
Yes.
And it was us, Terrace, and 3 of his tour people.
Yep.
And they decided they wanted to see how low you could drive somebody's score down. And they drove Terrace into negative 20s.
Yes, I thought that was.
And he was still soft-spoken and kind and polite.
Yep.
Terrace will always be a part of the D6 generation, and it's been a blast having him with us, and I can't imagine doing it without him in our universe.
So our next third chair here, you could definitely describe him as polite, but I don't know if soft-spoken would work. And that, of course, is our good friend and one of my personal inspirations. Inspirations?
Inspirations is
sure,
okay. Especially in this instance. Yeah. The man is an icon.
He is an icon. And, of course, I speak to none other than Tom Vassell. Let's hear what Tom had to say.
Hey, folks. Tom Vassell from the Dice Tower here. And this is 200 episodes. That is a lot of episodes, especially when each episode lasts between 10 and 30 hours. The D6 generation is one of the very first podcasts that I ever listened to. There was a lot of podcasts, and I remember first going to Gen Con 6 years ago. I didn't know what was going on, and I ran into these guys, and they were so friendly and welcoming to me, and I was kind of in awe that a big podcast would talk to such a small podcast like the Dice Tower. But they were really cool about it. I remember a few years later when we met at Gen Con to discuss them joining the Dice Tower Network. And I was like, wow, we snagged such a big fish. I couldn't believe these guys want to join the Dice Tower Network. And so it's been interesting as time goes by. I appreciate that they have me on their show. Of course, obviously, since they have Steve Bonacore on their show, pretty much they let anyone on. But it's always nice to come on and have a good time. And when I'm on the D6 generation, I have a chance to not necessarily be the straight guy, and I can just cause no end of grief to these two. At the same time, I have to say that I believe their show is the only recording of a podcast that I've ever fallen asleep in while Russ was going over the rules to one of the games. He manages to actually speak longer than the rule books are long, and Craig is always telling me that I'm wrong. But I digress. These guys are fantastic. They've done a fantastic job for the industry. They are the only podcast that really keeps a nice line between miniatures and board gaming. And I love listening to their show, especially at the beginning. I love that intro. I love to hear Craig say that people are wrong, even if it's me, and even though I always know the answers to the questions when I'm not in the third chair. Guys, congratulations on 200 episodes. I love to see at least 5 more, or 200, or 400. We'll see what happens in the future. Talk to you later. Tom Vassell out.
Thank you, Tom. That was very, very kind and hilarious. It was awesome. And you know, it's really funny because it was really neat to watch the Dice Tower just sort of consume Gen Con. I think this was really fun to watch. So the Dice Tower, for the record, the Dice Tower has always been as large or larger than the D6 in terms of raw listeners. Like we're both, we're almost like neck and neck. And every year at Gen Con, Tom and I would sort of compare, quietly compare numbers. Normal podcasts. It's
very disturbing to observe this little ritual.
Like this little thing where, like Tom and I kind of like look at each other and like, so
you can almost hear,
but it's all in good fun. It's like a friendly little rivalry. But what's been really fun to watch is, when Tom did come, that part of the story is not an exaggeration. I think when Tom first started coming to Gen Con, it was new. He was more of an Origins guy because Origins is much more board gaming focused, whereas Gen Con was much more, Gen Con had a lot of board games then, but it was much more RPG and miniature-y. Now it's got a lot more other things. And so, Tom started coming over there. But now what's great about it is the Dice Tower it's so amazing to watch Tom just instinctively know what to do to really promote his show and promote the network. And it's been so nice that they were so welcoming to bring us into the network, even though we're really kind of a different sort of topic and different sort of format than the rest of the shows in the Dice Tower network. But it was great that Tom reached out to us and was like, hey, will you join the network? He always promotes the heck of us at the Gen Con or at Gen Con. And he also, Dice Tower now, we talked about it a little bit with Eric Summer on this show not too long ago. they're now in these massive halls with thousands of people, and
craziness.
To understand the reach that the Dice Tower has and the relationship and the passion that the listeners of the Dice Tower have for the folks there that work so hard to make it happen. And I have just the utmost respect for Tom, who's been able to turn this thing, which most of us do as a hobby and maybe get a little bit of revenue.
He's turned it into a juggernaut.
It's a business. He's actually making money at it. And I know it's a lot of hard work, and I know he's up long hours making this happen, but it's just really impressive that he's able to do this and do it in a place where, in podcasting, where there's not a lot of people that actually make real money doing this sort of thing. And I know he does video.
Well, he's also very lucky. He was blessed with the face that could easily go to YouTube, make that transition.
Yes.
I mean, if we looked half as good as Tom, maybe we would be doing the same.
It's true. And if I had, if I had Eric Summer's chiseled jaw,
I was going to say you've got Tom's visage. You've got the stentorian tones of Eric Summer.
Yeah, they've got the whole thing going on, the whole package.
It's not a surprise, really.
Thank you for always, being there for all the other podcasts reaching out to us. You really are what I would say is the dean of gaming podcasts, and it's just so nice that podcasters always amazed by the folks that are established reaching out and helping out the newer podcasts, and we try to remember that always, how welcoming folks like Tom and Eric and Podhammer and other podcasts that were way established more than us when we started, and we try to remember that going forward and pay forward and help the other new podcasts show up on their shows, cross over, help out wherever we can, because I think it's really important that we keep the industry going. Can't stop the signal, right?
Can't stop the signal.
No way.
Wow, that's a callback.
See how I can do that?
Yeah.
So anyway, and last,
I think that leaves one more in the can, Russ.
This is kind of great to have John on last, I think, because John kind of takes us back to the beginning. So I'll talk more about that after we play John. But let's listen to what John has to say.
Hey everyone, this is John Yakface Regal, co-owner of Daka Daka and Occasional Third Chair. As someone who has proudly listened to every single episode, I just wanted to offer a huge congratulations on reaching your 200th. I imagine how incredibly tough it is to continually have to put out new content, so as a listener and a fan, I just wanted to say thanks for doing it. For those of us who love to hear about the fun and positivity of gaming, even with the occasional dash of disappointment, there simply isn't anything better out there. I know I speak for a lot of people when I say, you make us all feel like we're an extended part of your gaming group, and that's something truly special. I honestly can't pick just a single favorite D6G moment because it's the quality of the entire run that stands out to me. So a huge thanks again, especially to Russ, Craig, and Nicole for your perseverance and talent. But also for all the great contributions from the past, including Raef and his roundtable, Words from Wales, The Score, When Wives Attack, Dan from Myriad Games, and of course, the poor news guy, who is now just relegated to introducing this pap. And here's to at least another 200 episodes. Viva la Pole!
Nice job, John. He called back everything there. What a great way to end it. And I think, it's funny because Daka Daka, I know folks who listen to episode 1 know that Daka always is a special place in Craig and my heart.
Oh yes.
We really launched that whole thing. I started the website, but it was Craig starting the gaming league that started the need for the website, which turned into this thing, which later, John became a moderator of, and then took over the website, and is now, bought it and took it over and has grown it with his coworker, co-host,
leaps and bounds. Lego Burner.
Yeah, they're making a major thing now. They're creating games and all kinds of crazy stuff over there. But really, getting involved in that sense of community with Daka Daka, when Craig and I were involved with it, when our lives got busy and we had kids and we had to kind of pull away a little bit and we got disengaged from Daka Daka for a variety of reasons and let it go, it wasn't that long before we realized we missed that community. We missed building, we missed being engaged with the community. And that was that absence that I think we both felt was one of the reasons we wanted to try podcasting, sort of a different way to get engaged with the community. And so it's so nice to hear someone who has so much experience, has spent so much of his own time building one of the premier communities in a miniature gaming on the internet, to come out and say, you still provide that sense of community to me. Is very flattering and humbling. So, John, thank you so much. Thank you for being such a passionate listener. And thank you, as always, for carrying the torch over there at Daka Daka and still keeping the lights on over there and making it such a great place to come visit.
It's awesome knowing that it's there.
It is. It sure is.
Yeah.
And that's it, right, Craig? I think we got through all of our... Wow, that's long. That's almost
that was a lot. These guys and gal are stalwart.
Yes, they are. Thank you so much to all of you guys for making the Third Chair work. You literally saved this show. And I think made it, and as much as I love being with Raef and doing the thing, I think the show has become more than it could have ever been before without this change, in a positive way, because now we get more expertise, more insights, more creativity, more things just injected in the show, and it keeps Craig and I on our feet. We can't become stale because we've got a new person every episode we got to impress.
It certainly broadens the spectrum.
It sure does. So thanks for all your contributions. And all your hard
thanks
work.
to all the third chairs, including the guys that couldn't get in on time because of our little mishap.
Exactly. So we're going to take a quick break now. We'll be back in a little bit with some contributions from our listeners.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakeland and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. Our shout out, as always, is to all of our wonderful supporters over at Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the D6 Generation and you too can support the show. So conventions are a big deal, no matter what you're into. And there's sort of a big one happening this week for me that has nothing to do with gaming. It's called SEMA. It's out in Las Vegas. It's a big deal. It's all these crazy cars. So it's kind of a big thing. And I had the chance to go. I've never been before. I was really, really excited. So I was like, okay, could go. But then I realized when it was Halloween. Like today, this actual day, the moment I'm recording this is on Halloween. So if I had gone to this convention for car stuff, it would have been on Halloween. And I would have missed out on all the coolness that entails, because this year my kids are getting they're at that age where it's like, okay, they're going to go or they're not going to go. She's a freshman in high school. Is it cool to trick or treat? Is it not cool to trick or treat? Is it cool to dress up in a costume, or is it lame? Well, I'm glad I stayed home, because despite last minute, I don't know what I'm going to do, the night before Halloween, today on Halloween, oldest decided, yes, I am going to go. And she is wearing her outfit that she wore from the Ren Fair. So, hey, when you spend all that money on that Ren Fair outfit, you never know. You might get to repurpose that and use it again on Halloween. Of course, it also means that it's 47 degrees outside and it's dark. And she's wearing a corset with a short sleeve little top thing. And I had to pull the mom card and say, you will put on a jacket, because I don't want her to die of pneumonia on Halloween, because I feel like that would be a bad way for things to end. But the younger sister was really into it this year, and she wore all of her Harry Potter stuff from when we went down to visit Universal Studios. She's a Ravenclaw. The only thing I had to get for that costume, I had to get a scarf, which you would think would be really easy, except she told me that she needed a scarf for the costume last night, and Halloween is today. So here I am trying to find a scarf, which I finally found. I swear to God, the cashier could have told me that scarf cost $500. I'd be like, fine, just charge it to my card. I need a scarf to save Halloween. So I got all the things that we needed for Halloween, and I didn't have a costume because I don't really dress up anymore, but something kind of cool happened. So I got this package in the mail. I'm like, and the package was from Nissan. And I'm like, what? And I open it up. And because of the whole Nissan Rogue Star Wars edition that they're doing and the tie-ins they're doing with Star Wars, they sent a Stormtrooper mask out to all of us auto journalists. So the strangest thing happened today on my Facebook feed. It's just all these people that I work with, and they all have pictures of themselves in these Stormtrooper masks. So it's kind of fun. And I was thinking about wearing it. I was handing out candy tonight, and who do you think actually snagged the Stormtrooper mask? 30 seconds after he walked in the door from work tonight. Stormtrooper mask, this is really cool. Where'd you get this? I'm going to wear this. So I'm not wearing a mask because Russ has absconded with the Stormtrooper mask. He is dressed like he was for work, nice, respectable businessman pants and a sweater, and is looking all kinds of respectable, and has a Stormtrooper mask on his head. So I might not be going to see cool cars for Halloween, but I am instead handing out lots of candy, having fun with my kids, and watching Russ act like the goofball that he is in a Stormtrooper mask. Happy Halloween, everyone.
Hey everyone, it's time to talk now about our friends over at Geek Nation Tours. Now, if you're at a computer, if you're in your car, just remember one thing, geeknationtours.com. But if you're at a computer, go to geeknationtoursrightnow.com and click on the Tours button right near the top of the webpage. And this is really the easiest way to describe the awesome that is Geek Nation Tours. On this page, you're going to see just tile after tile of all the amazing upcoming tours, the amazing places that maybe as a geek you haven't even thought about, the places you could go to see all the different crossover with both seeing a new place and just, learning about a place and just experiencing the joy of travel, but then also understanding how it ties into your passion, your hobbies, whether that hobby is zombies, whether it's anime, whether it's Doctor Who, whether it's Indiana Jones, Lord of the Rings. Geek Nation Tours has fantastic tours that really take you to the places where these films or other passions occurred, and then you just really see the little nuances, the little elements that make it fantastic. And what's really great about it is, even if you go to New Zealand or whatever and see all the Lord of the Rings stuff with your family, maybe not everybody in your family is a total geek. Imagine going there with a bunch of people who are all geeks like yourself and are really totally enjoying it and freaking out just as much as you will when you see these things. And that's really the magic what Geek Nation Tours has to offer. It's like when you go to that great gaming convention with all your fellow geeks and you're all freaking out over the new board game hotness, where if you're at home saying that, people are like, what? Why are you so excited about a board game? So they don't get it. But Geek Nation Tours, they do get it. And so again, all these great exotic locales, but also the thing to remember about Geek Nation Tours is maybe you want to go to that big gaming convention and it's far from your home. You want to go, you really are going to go by yourself. You want to be people who you can hang out with, understand. Again, Geek Nation Tour is here to help you as well. For example, Adepticon 2017 got a great tour there. You're going to go there with a bunch of the Geek Nation Tour folks. Terrace is going to make sure that you're hooked up with all the best events. You'll get to see some exclusive things, like maybe having dinner with folks like us at the D6 Generation and other podcasters, other famous game designers. A great way to get to know people, get to meet people, and get just really feel at home at these places, and then do other great things in the area as well. So there's really no better way to travel as a geek. And if you're thinking about, getting out there and seeing the world, and you are yourself a geek, and you probably are if you listen to this show, head on over and check out geeknationtours.com.
You're listening to the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com. More fun than Merchant of Venus. Wait, what? Who writes these?
Hey, welcome back, and as promised at the top of this bicentennial episode. See, I had to do it again, Craig, because you can't do bicentennial.
How often do you get to use the term bicentennial?
Well, twice, I think, or maybe 200 times. I'm not sure how that works. But in any case, since we're here, we thought it would be kind of fun. We asked our listeners to go ahead and email us and send us either audio or just a little paragraph or so about what some of their favorite moments were from the show, the past 200 episodes. And then we would do the same. So we'll go through. We're gonna talk about some of our listeners' favorite moments, and then what those kind of memories trigger for us as we go through them. And then at the end of this, we're going to list our own personal top 2 or 3 favorite moments each as well. Yeah, how's that sound, Raef?
Yeah. Yep, sounds good.
Yeah, good.
All right, great. All right, so let's we got our very first one here, and these are in the order they were received. And also, what we're going to do at the end of this also is we got to randomly determine one of these entrants via email or their audio entry. We're going to roll some dice and figure out which of them gets a lucky choice from the D6G prize tub for a great game. So, our first email comes from Eric Hess. Raef, can you read us here what Eric Hess writes?
Yep, sure thing. Eric writes, my favorite moment was the interview with author David Weber after Craig had talked about Mr. Weber's newest Honor Harrington novel on a previous episode.
That was awkward.
That is on my list, too.
Yeah.
So those who don't remember, Raef, do you remember this one?
No, I mean, I remember David Weber appearing on the show, but I don't remember the prior thing.
So this was very cool. So on an episode, as you all know, every episode in Achievements in Gaming, we talk about the books we've read and things like that. And of course, Craig is a huge, as am I, but Craig is bigger than I, huge David Weber fan, right? Yeah. And so Craig has been reading. Craig's been reading the books forever. And on one particular episode, Craig read David Weber's latest book and was reviewing it and was quite disappointed in it.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And made some
very disappointed.
Made some kind of analogy like, this is what happens when authors get too famous. They don't use an editor anymore, and it really would have benefited from editing. And pretty much, it was very, very critical of the book. Let's put it that way.
It was.
And then,
I haven't done any of those since I started writing my own. You noticed that.
And then literally, I don't even exactly remember how David Weber sort of fell into our lap, but it was
Vincent.
Yes, but literally
Vincent from Winged Hussar knew his publicist,
right?
And they hooked up, and so literally like within a week or two of that interview or of that episode where I had expressed my disappointment in the book, that exact book showed up with an inscription from David Weber in the front cover. But I didn't know, like, was it connected? Like, does he somehow know? Like, is this sarcastic? Is he like, is he being mean about it? And it wasn't. It had been in the works for months, and it just happened to arrive right at that moment.
And then, of course, David Weber came on the show, and we kind of called Craig out about it. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was kind of awesome.
It was epic. And I think
Eric, I agree. It was. I don't know about favorite.
I agree.
It was one of my most awkward moments.
It was definitely
one of my most uncomfortable.
It was hilarious. In fact, if you had asked me to list the top 3 things that I would hope to happen on the show, that would have been one of them. Although I never would have been one of them. Yes, well, only because I would love to have gotten. I would have loved to have, because it didn't quite happen. It didn't happen the way I would have dreamed it would happen, which is our show is so well circulated that we have to be careful about what we say, because famous authors would email us and be like, "I heard what you said about my book,"
right?
And I want to take umbrage with you, sir. We don't get any of that because, quite frankly, we're not that big and no one that famous listens to us.
Nobody cares about what we say.
But that kind of happened here in a very roundabout way, and so it was one of those things where it did in the end kind of work out the way, which I thought was hilarious. David Kroll also wrote in, and he also liked the David Weber episode, but he had another reference too. Craig, what did David talk about?
Well, episode 66, where we interviewed David Weber. He loved the McNerdigan question and David's answer about Napoleon III. But he specifically calls out, it also connected to David Weber in a way, the lost chapter on 60s. Well, it was David Weber about wet versus space navies and how the physics of the sci-fi dictate the style of your space combat, or the combat you want to write drives your physics. And so it was really it was an awesome opportunity to talk to someone about what's your approach for writing, and how do you create the world that you're writing in. And how does the story you want to tell affect the way you have to have the world work? It was really neat. It was one of my favorites also. It was a lost chapter, which you can get if you become a patron.
Yes. That particular one is still, all the lost chapters are there. So if you want to go back and listen to 67. I agree. That was also one of those moments where, David Weber and then his associate who works for
Chris Weave.
Yeah, Chris Weave, BU9. They're such huge, real, Navy folks and really super nerdy about this stuff in a good way. And it was so awesome to talk about him and geek out with them on this thing. And that was when he dashed my dreams that in real life there will probably never be giant space aircraft carriers or spacecraft carriers.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't really practical. I'm like, oh man, you mean no Battlestar Galactica?
Although we know from the 3C segment.
Yes.
That maybe he's changed his mind.
Maybe he has, because he's doing speaking tours now on carriers in space. So maybe I convinced him, because I kept saying I really want this to be true. So maybe he went back and worked through some battle scenarios. I would like to think I had a little part in that.
There you go.
I can dream. And then let's see. I'll read this one. So
do that one. Yeah.
Brian L. wrote in, and he said he loved it when we had Rick Priestley on from the Gates of Antares Kickstarter. Even though our Kickstarter curse did crush the campaign, in fact, it was canceled before the show even aired, it was awesome to hear how pumped we both were about having Rick on the show. You are positively giddy, and the infectious level of excitement is why I'm still listening after 200 episodes. So
thank you, Brian.
Very nice. And that was the first that was the first time Rick was ever on the show.
Yeah.
And
guilty as charged on the giddy front.
We were totally. I mean, there have been a few guests on the show where I get really, really nervous about. Most of the time, it's like just talking to Raef and Craig. We're just hanging out, and whether where there's someone we've never met, but they're just, they're a game designer, and they're just like, they're like, yeah, we have micro celebrity, but we're just down to earth guys playing games. That's no problem. But you get these guys on that have been in the industry for years, and we kind of worship their products when we were younger, and even till to this day. It's just like Rick Priest is one of those guys. David Weber was like that. There's been a few guys on the show.
Well, he is there.
Yeah, he is there.
No, I meant in our eyes. It's like to us meeting Brad Pitt or
right.
Somebody.
It was exactly like that. And there's been a few like that. And Rick was definitely on that list. And we definitely, I know that was one of the things too. Going back to that Faithful car trip in 2008, we were like, wouldn't it be cool if like our show was even respected enough that someone. I don't think we went as high as Rick Priestley. It was just like some game designer that a game publisher would come on it, So it's kind of like I don't think we even dared to dream to be that.
That
level.
segues into one of my favorite memories of the show.
Oh yeah,
which is the very first Gen Con. And where was Russ? I just remember it was Craig and I.
I couldn't go,
and
my kids were too little.
I think he had something going on.
Yeah, I couldn't.
He had something going on,
Yep.
and it was before podcasting was what it is now, where everybody's like, what do you mean you don't listen to 6 podcasts?
Right.
And Russ had convinced us, I don't know how much earlier in the months, if it was that February into August, I don't remember.
No, it happened in July. I got the phone call. You guys called me in July that there was this thing called Gen Con, and we were actually going to go.
Okay.
That's
I had known
because
about
I was
Gen
in
Con.
Maine. I was on vacation in Maine.
I had known about Gen Con from D&D and stuff, but I remember going, and I remember saying to Craig, I'm like, come on, let's go around and let's get like interviews on tape for, on recorder for these. I even think we had a micro cassette. I don't even think the iPhones were like that big a deal back then.
No, we had a recorder. Yep.
Yeah, and I remember Craig just being like, Rafe, I don't know, like they're busy, and sure enough, we got a lot of rejections. A lot. People like, what? Who? A pod? What? Yeah, no, I got a booth to set up. But a couple people talked to us. Flying Frog was one of them, by the way.
Yep, absolutely.
Forget that. They were very friendly to us.
Fantasy Flight.
Mm-hmm.
Fantasy Flight, yep. And I just remember that sort of camaraderie that Craig and I had. I felt like we were in the trenches with like our press hats on before there were even press hats and walking around trying to get interviews for this thing called the podcast. And I remember all the rejections. And then I remember the very next year, we couldn't beat them away from with a stick. And I don't mean us, me, Russ, and Craig. I mean podcasts in general. Like in just 1 year, all the vendors were like, podcasts? Yeah. When can we talk to you? And all the other podcasts that were kind of just starting too. So that's what I meant.
I just remember walking into the vendor hall that first time and the awe of being in a room that big full of gaming stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really jealous you guys got to go because I had dreamed of going to Gen Con back when I first read about it in Dragon Magazine when I was like in high school. And I'd always dreamed to go to Gen Con. And of course, now we had this show that could maybe somehow help get us there. But then the idea that people would talk to us, Rafe, you're always better at that than I am. Like, just going to people cold and be like, hey, I have this thing. Would you like to talk to me about it? And so that was hard for me to get started. But then when we did that, it was funny to see how fast it went from, I don't even know what this is, to like within a year to actually catering to like you said, anybody who would listen, because I think they started figuring out that these things worked and really drove
these outlets worked.
Games. Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Very cool. So we got an email here from Joe here. So Craig, what does Joe have to say?
Joey V.
Yeah.
Because of Vespasiani, I know. Hey, you 2 and 3, because Rafe's right here with us. I've been a huge fan since the first time I listened to you about 7 years ago. Is that right? Wow, great job. I feel like I know you guys. I'm like in your gaming group. You're the buds I've never met. I love the revolving third chair format. I had daydreams of being worthy enough to occupy it. If only I had become a someone. Aww. Don't give up, Joe. You might become a someone yet. And he has a few moments that he'd like to trick out to me. To us. He liked that I was becoming a dad, although he does have some question over whether or not that was all a stunt for the show. It was real. No, I do in fact have a son. So yes. And Reese was not just a stunt for the show. Although I am dedicated to the show. The episode and Joe is a comedian and did send me a CD of his a few years ago, and we listened to it on the way to Gen Con on a road trip. I think it was Gen Con we were going to. And, of course, he loves the episode where I mentioned that I was listening to his CD on a road trip. And he was so proud. He surprised his kids by accidentally having the podcast queued up to that part so that they could hear about their dad being talked about on the way home from school one day. And then he loves our prediction episodes. He thinks they're classic. He loves specifically how the convoluted scoring system evolves each year, and he can never wait for the next one.
Yeah,
there you go.
Excellent. Well,
and he says,
Joe.
"Keep it going, gentlemen. The fate of my gaming sanity is in your hands. Maybe by episode 300, I will have attained third chair status." See, so he hasn't given up.
Right.
So
well,
there
good,
you go,
good.
Joe.
I think we need to get Joe on here. That's awesome. Thank you, Joe. And yeah, I think I remember all those things. It is.
I'm vague on the first one.
Well, I remember because we actually celebrated on the show, and I kind of gave you man shower gifts.
Oh yes, I do remember that.
and so it was kind of like what that reminds me of is just how really long we've been doing this. I mean,
yes,
especially once you become a parent, it's kind of hard to remember your life of not being a parent. So It does seem like a long time ago. But it is, Rafe commenting on the fact, like, I don't think iPhones were very big back then. It's kind of like, oh, God, we've been doing this a long time. So,
we were arguing over what kind of stuff you might eventually have in your phone.
Yes, I remember.
And I argued that we would have it all in our phone.
Yes.
And I missed it by like 3 years.
You were off a little bit, but you were right eventually.
And now we have all our phone. Now it's all on our phone.
Right. And I argued you'd eventually play video games, which I was right about, but you had to have a kid first. So we
I
worked
did
that
have.
out.
I did.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, and the prediction episodes universally one of my favorites as well, which is funny because when we started the predictions thing, I think all three of us were like, "This is going to be a dumb idea, but we'll try it once and see."
Yep.
And consistently, people email us. It's one of the most downloaded episodes every year. I think there are people that only listen to the prediction episode every year. I really think that's the
kind of
case.
Scary.
It is. So if you can only listen to 4 hours of the D6 Generation a year, make that the one, apparently. But anyway, so people really like it, so we keep doing it. So hopefully Rafe will come back.
That leads me to another memory.
Yeah.
So I call this the lightning in the bottle memory. You guys know I like to watch a lot of documentaries and a lot of music documentaries, and they talk about how when a certain band gets together and the timing's just right and the players are just right and everything's poised to be just right. I really do feel that that's what happened that day in the car on our way down to TempleCon, was somehow the three of us captured lightning in a bottle. Both in that our three personalities are different enough to be entertaining to a wider swath of audience. We're friends. We're close enough friends that we can banter and have some truth on the air. It's not fake. It's not just for the show, that kind of thing. We each played a role in the show. I kind of look at it, Russ as like the engineer role. Like he's the guy that did all the technical stuff, made sure that, we knew how to, Craig and I didn't know how to upload an episode. I don't think I still know how to upload an episode. He's always the one driving the bullet points. He's like, hey, listen, we got to have, something to talk about. Craig, he brings all his theatrical experience to this with the
rapid fire and everything.
Rapid fire and the little ads, and Russ started to get down doing that, not the ads, but the little what do they call
bumpers.
The bumpers, the bumpers, and just all that creative stuff, and how Russ and I could kind of poke Craig on the air, poke the bear, get him riled up about something, and I do feel like that we captured that lightning in the bottle, and the timing was perfect because podcasts weren't big. Like if we decided to do this now, I don't think it'd be the same thing. What do you guys think?
I do think the timing was right. I do. Now there are lots of podcasts, so yes, I do think it'd be harder to stand out with so many. I remember. I mean, it was still early enough where there were. People wouldn't make podcasts over 2 hours long because you couldn't burn them to CDs. And if you couldn't burn it to a CD, you couldn't listen to it in your car because not everybody had, again, the phones weren't huge yet. Not everybody had an easy-to-use MP3 player, or they're
MP3
expensive.
players.
Remember?
Right.
And so it's kind of weird how much things have changed, but we were early enough on that thing, and there weren't so many podcasts in iTunes that you couldn't, even if you were small, you still showed up on the first or second page because there weren't that many gaming podcasts. Now I think if you go in there, it's just like, page after page of them. Thousands of them, and there's thousands of ways to get them, and there's thousands of competitors to iTunes now.
Just look at the press line at Gen Con to see how it's grown.
Right. So I do think it's And I don't think we should try to claim that we are we may be one of the earlier ones, but there were people that paved the way before us, like the Dice Tower, that were around for years before us.
Yeah.
There were several, Board Games of Scott, several others that were pioneers in the area even before we even thought about it, and that inspired us. But still, I think we were early enough into the cycle. Still, there are a couple things we do that are unique, and I think one of them is that we try to bridge the gap between board games, miniature games, and role-playing games. Not too many shows do all of those things, and I think one of the, especially on the miniature side, there aren't too many shows that are general miniature gaming shows. They're usually specific to one game, because who would be crazy enough to keep buying different miniature games? It's so expensive and painting up new models every time. You have to be insane to do that. I mean, so we are apparently, but other shows usually, and there's much better. I mean, there's awesome War Machine podcasts, and there's awesome Warhammer 40,000 podcasts, and there's amazing Infinity podcasts, and there's fantastic weird miniature podcasts. Those are all really, really awesome and way more knowledgeable about those areas than we are. But where do you go to learn about the new miniature game? Where's the general miniature game? And so we still have that niche, I think, going for us, for whatever it's worth.
And I think too, like, maybe from episode 3 till now, it's the same format. Like, we really stumbled upon a good format for the show, and we stuck to it. And I think that made a huge difference.
And I think it's a testament to that is how many podcasts did the 3 hosts, the tripod plan there.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
I mean, you could name many right off the top of your head, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have a couple audio entries here too, we should probably listen to. So let's cue up the one from Spooky here. So here comes Spooky's audios. Are you guys ready?
All right.
Here we go.
Yep. And go.
The D6 generation was the last of the D6 podcasts. It changed the future of gaming, and it changed us. It taught us that we had to rate our own games, or others would do it for us. It showed us that we had to care for our box control, because if we don't, who will? And that innovative mechanics come from the most unlikely places. Mostly, though, I think it gave us hope. Hope that there'll always be the new hotness, even for gamers like us. And that's why we're blowing it up. The D6 generation is a hazard to podcast navigation. Yes, it's a hazard. Kind of like when you have a giant space station and you park it in an obscure solar system. Well, yeah, it's still a hazard. No, put a hole in there. A pole in there won't help. Due to the nature of the pole, it can't carry the weight. Well, yes, it's an inside joke. Yes, I know space is infinite, just like there's millions of terabytes of data storage out there. And, of course, you have hard storage options. Look, it's the same thing, okay? Well, I don't know. There's like a cooking podcast or something they want us to use the storage for. Plus, they're worried about other podcasts will vanish into apotheosis or something, just like what happens to the captains of space stations. Oh, well, like there's Sheridan and Cisco and those guys on the Russian Mir station. Oh, you think those were actually breakdowns? Yeah, that's what the commies wanted you to think. Anyway. Okay, folks. My first memory of the D6 generation was shortly after it started. I was stationed in Quantico, the land that God gaffed off, and had one of those jobs where every day was a struggle not to suck-start my 9mm. No, really, I'd be sitting at the desk and, they'd be there with the gun in my hand and the general would be like, "Spooky, get in here and fix these slides." And I'd be like, wait a minute. And he'd be like, "No." And then it'll be like, "You should have used Times New Roman and this is Helvetica and get these all the same font size." And, well, you get the point. It was the dark days before Audible, and I was on the road for my daily Death Race 2000 commute up the I-95. I had a 40-minute drive from my house to the back gate, and of course another 20 minutes to my sub-basement cubicle, because Ross Watson saved you if you drove a mile over the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on base. Then, of course, there was this one general named Van Riper who was legendary for pulling people over, then saying, "You stay here until I get the police here," and then he'd disappear. You never... So I decided to download a general gaming podcast, having gone through all my episodes of Mysterious Universe, 40K Radio, Spooky South Coast. I hit play on that first episode of the D6G. I'm not afraid to admit I'm a little bit of a political junkie, so when I heard Geekly McNerdigan scream for the first time, "Wrong!" I was hooked, instantly, like a Magic the Gathering fan when that first sweet hit of cardboard hits his nostrils. Of course, like any good drug dealer, the first 4 hours is free, and it was only years later that they'd monetize the extra 30 minutes or so. Still, that way I could enjoy 4 to 10 hours of quality gaming entertainment per episode, thus keeping me from falling asleep on the drive home from my 14-hour days and sliding into a family of 4 causing unspeakable human tragedy. So, now, as we prepare to destroy the D6 generation, that they may go sleeping into the light... Wait, what? What do you mean this is just the 200th show? It's like another 400 hours of gamer nonsense. Oh, my wife is going to kill me! So they're not shutting down? And more importantly, I'm not blowing anything up? Well, dang it. Just dandy. I guess I'll listen to a lost episode on 2016 movie spoilers or something about copyright infringement law and gaming podcasts. I don't know. Turn the light off on your way out.
That was awesome, Spooky. That was fantastic.
Wow, that was really good.
Really, really good. So, long-time listener, Spooky always contributes to our contest. So thanks again, Spooky. Another fantastic entry.
That went dark a couple places.
It did go dark.
That was funny.
I really liked a lot of, it's funny, he brings up a point about the very first rapid fire that I did want to make sure we mentioned, which is we used to get a lot of mail about rapid fire in the very beginning.
Yep.
It was to the point where, I don't know if you have to be a really early listener before the intro music came in or anything else, but I ended up getting so many comments on iTunes, and we get emails about, there's all this shouting in the beginning of your show, and I couldn't make it past the first 2 minutes because there's too much shouting. Why are you yelling at each other? Why are you doing all those funny voices? It's just terrible. You guys are terrible at that. So
we had conversations about cutting it.
So we did.
And I actually advocated cutting it on more than one occasion.
And I really thought it was something interesting and different. So I put a disclaimer in the front of the show.
Oh, that's
it
right.
It basically said, up next is rapid fire. It's a little bit crazy, but not too, but
stick through it.
But short. And if you really don't like it, fast forward the next 5 minutes. I was like, just go past 5 minutes. You'll really be. There's a whole different show there after 5 minutes. And it took it was a while before I eventually removed the disclaimer and started seeing more positive feedback about it. Right. But I think what ended up happening was once we did the disclaimer, the majority of people started saying, "No, I love that thing. That's part of the best part of the show."
Happened, yeah.
And so people really reached out to us and said, "This is awesome." Go ahead.
And I will say it was an odd ego event to go from I advocating pulling it to then going, no, we're going to run it, but we're going to have a disclaimer at the beginning.
Right.
For some reason that hurt more than pulling it.
Right.
But it all worked out in the end.
It all worked out in the end.
It was a hotly debated segment in the beginning. Not among us. Russ and I loved it. We were like, nope, stays in. And but a lot of emails on that topic.
And of course, we wouldn't be doing this topic any justice without remembering that poor man. Was it in Spain or Italy? I always forget. We got
crashed his bike.
Email where he was like, I was biking down the side of the road when all of a sudden I heard wrong in my ear, and I went off the road into the side of the road.
Yeah. And Craig puts a lot of work into those because to do the stats and to look up the stuff.
Oh yeah,
and,
that's not
a lot of work. A lot of work goes in on the show behind the scenes.
A lot of
it's
prep
not
for
just
5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't just. But Spooky, man, that was really good, and I feel like a lot of listeners say to us, I feel like I know you for years. So Spooky's definitely one of those of our listeners where I feel like I know Spooky.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome. So
from his write-ins.
And I feel like I know him a little more now than I did before we just listened to his segment.
I know, right? One of the things that also I think really kept us really excited about the show, especially in the beginning, but even later, was all the emails we used to get from, and we still do get from men and women serving overseas, and how it gave they were away from home, they were away from their gaming groups, and especially in the earlier days when there weren't as many options for this, it really was very humbling and heartwarming to know that we were sort of able to give people a taste of their home and their gaming groups a little bit while they were on deployment. So it was really that alone, those emails
that was
alone
very special to all.
Really were very special to us, and kept us really making sure the show was great all the time. So,
and we would get emails too, and these
or
making sure
not
the
too
show
horrible, not too horrible.
Great.
That was another thing.
And there you go. There's a little glimpse behind the curtain. I am being 100% earnest with not too horrible. Russ is being ironic.
Well, no, I'm being. So this is something we talked about too, right?
Self-deprecating.
It's right. It's like, how do you? My nature is self-deprecating. That's just how I am. But I thought it would be good for the show, and that was another thing we got in. There was some weird feedback on the self-deprecation, like you guys are like not as bad as you say you are. You're right. And we were like, well, we hope we're not. We're just kind of a joke, But at the same time, in the beginning, we didn't know. In the beginning, and I don't know if everybody knows this either. Do you guys remember where "Not Too Horrible" comes from?
No,
it wasn't somebody's. It was somebody's review.
The third iTunes review of the D6 Generation actually says "Not Too Horrible," and I thought that is perfect. And so we took it as a tagline, along with Dicer R Vice and some other things, and started using it. Universally hailed as not too horrible. That's where the ending comes from, is from that line. So I love that part about it. But we did, we conscientiously wanted to make sure the show was as good as it can be, because from the beginning we were all kind of like, well, if we're going to do this, we're not going to do it halfway.
Do it right.
It's going to be as good as we can make it. So that way, if it does crash, at least we can say, well, we gave it our best shot and we tried.
Right.
And so that's what I meant by making sure it was as good as we could make it, really.
Yeah. I got touched over the years too. We would get some really heartfelt emails from people that would be really going through something, just a rough patch of their life, and they would write in and they'd share that with us, and they'd say, I really just listening to you guys for the 4 hours, it just allowed me to forget it for that little piece of time, and I just want to thank you. And I'd read those and be like, holy cow! That's deep.
Like extremely humbling. Also,
it is. A, that somebody's listening. B, that it actually impacted them in a positive way, which is the three of us want. We're very positive people, except for Craig.
Yep.
And you're positive to other people. You're just harsh on yourself. And that people would take the time to write to us, and it was like, I remember in the beginning, Russ and Craig would be like, we were just talking into a black hole. I forget still that, like I said, that people listen to this. They come up to me in conventions. I'm like, how did you know my father died in a plane crash? They're like, you said that in the episode? I'm like, oh, yeah. But when people would write in, it would remind me of people listening and connecting that way. And that was pretty special.
Yeah. So we got another entry here from Phil. Are you guys ready to queue up the Phil Meister here?
Oh, good old Phil.
I don't know if I can handle this. What do you think the theme's going to be?
Hamsters.
I'm guessing some form of structural support. Here we go. Let's find out. Here comes Phil.
Hi, guys. Phil here. Who would have thought that trying not to suck would last for 200 episodes? Not me, that's for sure. Of course, having now actually met you both, no, I'm still baffled. Okay, so favourite parts of the show. Well, living as I do here in Old Hampshire, where everything is black and white and we still run it on Steam, I can't, of course, email you guys my favourite clip, so I'm going to record it onto a cassette tape. Now, I don't like the D6G enough to use a new cassette, so, of course, I'm going to have to find an old one and just record over it. So I'll just have a look in the box here and see what I've got. Awesome Mix Volume 3. Do not ask how I got that. Oh, that was a present from Craig. No, can't get rid of that. Twilight, the motion picture soundtrack. I think Nicole gave me that. Yeah, she said it's her favourite, so no, can't get rid of that. Loves It I Do, a tribute to Tom Jones, read by Owen Staten. No, not getting rid of that one. What's this one? No. Diesel the Weasel, an audiobook read by Eric Michael Summerer. Master copy. If found, please return to... No, can't make out the name. Oh well. What else we got here? No. Psych Evaluation. Patient R.W.
Oh, jeez.
A study of unrequited grease pencil love. Not sure I should have that. Oh, this one will do. Yeah. No idea what it is. That'll do. Anyway. I know what you're all thinking. Here comes the poll joke. But it's not happening. After Russ's comments about my last poll reference, those extremely hurtful comments, I cried for a week. Anyway, after his comments, I decided I have to move on. So my favourite clip is actually quite a serious one. It's one of those rare moments when Russ opened up and told us something deeply personal. He let us, the D6G listeners, in. He answered the question that we'd all been asking ourselves from the very beginning, from all the way back in episode 1A. Russ told us that it wasn't anything to do with...
Okay, now that you've mentioned our wives, I probably shouldn't mention the next thing, but this was disturbing, and I don't want to go there, but I have to. It's the funniest thing in the whole telephone book, okay? There was an event...
Oh, yes, I know where he's going.
I hope not. It was called Pole Dancing for Fun and Fitness. And the only I feel bad. I gotta say it though.
You have to say
it in the spirit in which it is intended.
Oh dear.
The email
address is Craig at the D6 Generation. Go ahead.
The last sentence of the description was, there is a weight limit of 250 pounds due to the nature of the poles.
It's true. It's true.
It's true.
That's what I said.
Well,
I wouldn't be laughing quite as hard as if it wasn't this late and it was the...
on that note, folks, that's our preliminary
Actually,
review.
I changed my mind. That's my favorite thing.
So, can't even close the segment. Okay, so...
Due to the nature of the ball.
All right, so...
250 pounds.
I think this goes into the bloopers.
There'll be more Gen Con in future episodes. Stay tuned. Gotta take us out.
So after all that, it was nothing to do with radiation at all. So now we all know, even the new listeners will all know just why Russ's head is so big. Okay, well, good luck with the next 200 episodes, guys. Long may the D6G continue. Viva la pole.
Well, thank you, Phil. That was awesome. Of course, Phil injected the actual. He injected the actual poll clip. That was great.
He did.
Wow.
He did. Yeah.
He snuck it right
That's
in there.
effort.
It's got to be. I mean, we must have been super late when we recorded that. I don't get it.
I think you just flown in from Indianapolis. You were like exhausted.
Just flown in from Indianapolis.
That was fantastic, and of course that is one of the oldest. Now, also
running jokes.
Do you guys remember where "Try Not to Suck" comes from?
No.
That was one of the original bumpers. I think it was like episode 2. It was like, "You're listening to the D6 Generation. We try not to suck." That was one of our initial self-deprecating bumpers. It only was like the first 10 episodes, but it was pretty. So that's pretty old school. So nice job, Phil.
Well, we still try not to suck.
We do try not to suck, and now it's and that was the one until we found "Not Too Horrible," which is a more eloquent way.
Yes.
So thank you for the iTunes review for that.
Yeah.
I've actually started using "Not Too Horrible," by the way, at work. I do.
Yeah?
Not referencing our show, of course, but like we'll be talking about something and we're trying to build some new software, and someone will say like, "Well, does it need to be like perfect before we launch the beta?" And it's, well, it has to be not too horrible. Right? So I find it to be a good measure of.
Is that when you're demonstrating on the whiteboard with a grease pencil?
Yes,
you say that,
and then we realize the grease pencil doesn't come off the whiteboard, so that's.
How many boxes did Phil tick in that?
He got a lot. As always, he gets them all. He's really good at weaving those all in there.
Yeah, he got a lot.
So yes, I mentioned one of the War Machine reviews. I mentioned grease pencil instead of a dry erase marker, and I've never lived that down.
No, you never have. That was really early on.
Really
also,
early, yeah. Good stuff. So thank you, Phil, as always, for a great references there. Fantastic.
Oh, Phil, you're getting me in trouble again, man.
Yep, he just re-earthed it.
Yeah.
So we got our final audio clip comes from Pranav here. You guys ready to listen to this one?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. So Rafe's broken out his round table when we talk, and you never really know what Rafe's going to ask us about.
Nope.
This round table. So
this one's a doozy, isn't it?
Be prepared for anything.
Quite intriguing.
Yes. And also, we're going to do a little mulling mechanics on dungeon crawling. I think we did this once before, but we're kind of updating it based on the latest dungeon crawlers and what we're enjoying, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of stuff out
What's
there.
What's that sound?
Things that make you go,
What is that sound?
Kermit?
That is mulling.
Oh, very good.
Oh.
Hold on. All right. But before we get to all that...
Wait. Yes. What's this sound?
Mulling.
That would be mulling in a dungeon.
I love it. Well done.
Very nice.
Okay, I want to do it a bunch more, but I'll refrain.
It doesn't... We've peaked. That was it right there in this episode. So that was Pranav pointing out in his email. He mentions that is the episode where I admitted that the D6 generation had actually peaked. Right there with mulling mechanics.
That's where we jumped the shark.
Right. And that was from episode...
I did go through when I first got the board and I got control of the echo effect. I will admit I got a little crazy. It just became a little thing that I like to do. I'd like to think that I outgrew it. I don't do it much anymore. But, what is it? And there's something about that as well.
Right.
I'd like all the listeners to point out to show I don't have access to that board.
Neither does Russ.
Oh, he doesn't anymore?
I used to. I gave in a moment of weakness, I gave the board to Craig. So
I thought just his
I'm the
board
master
died.
of the echo.
I thought just his board died, Russ, and he got a second one that had the ability to do the echo effect.
But because it's the 200th episode, Rafe, I have also been able to now enter a cave. So only you now, Rafe, are out alone in the rain.
Russ?
Well, yes.
Russ, where are you?
Oh, I'm over here, Craig.
Russ?
Around the corner. Follow the light. Follow the light.
Did Rafe follow us in?
Follow the light, Craig.
That's funny. I have no
Now I don't
cave
feel like
effect.
I'm very special.
See, there you go.
What I feel like? Now I feel like that I have been working under a misconception all these years, and Russ has always had the echo ability, and
think
just
so,
let me
too.
believe that I was the only one.
Yep.
No.
I am displeased, Wakeland.
I forgot how to use mine now. It's gone away again.
Oh, good.
That's funny.
So there you have it. So
Good.
So that was so. Thank you everyone for all your submissions there. They were fantastic. Definitely got us down memory lane. Before we roll for the winner here, let's just go ahead and roll for the winner. Rafe, do you have some dice in front of you?
I'm thinking.
I have a bunch. Okay, I have some. Craig, do you have a die, or you want me to do this? I have a giant glass jar. You can hear it. Wait, listen. See that? That's a giant glass jar of dice. I'm going to take out, because we're the D6 generation, I am taking out 2 D6.
Okay.
All right. Now, Rafe,
because we're just that.
What do
good.
they win?
They're going to win a pick from the prize tub.
They're going to run a picture. We're going to give them a picture.
Well, they
of
are.
us.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to send them a picture of the prize tub, and then they can name any game they see in the picture, and we will send it to them. That's how this is going to work. So, Craig, have you got them all numbered in front of you there from 1 to 12 in some manner?
Was I supposed to do that?
We'll just count down.
Sure, I do. I absolutely do.
Ready? I'm about to roll. So when I tell you a number,
no, wait. If it's 1, 2, 3, 4,
good,
5,
radio.
6. There's 7.
Okay. So if I roll above a 7, I'm going to re-roll. Ready?
Okay.
2d6.
All right. But then you can't roll a 1.
What?
Poor Eric Hess has no chance.
Good
then.
point. All right. Tell you what. I'll roll a D10.
You got a D8.
I got a D10 right here. Got a
D10.
I'm going to roll a D10. If it's over a 7,
that
I'll
seems
re-roll.
like it's very inefficient.
Here I go. I'm rolling it now. It's more efficient than trying to find a D8 and subtract 1. Here we go. Ready? I have rolled an 8. That does not help. I shall roll again.
Good Lord. I can see nothing's changed over 200 episodes.
Well, we try not to suck, and sometimes we fail miserably.
We do. You can't always succeed. So I rolled a 2 now, Craig. A 2. Who is number 2?
A 2. That would be David Kroll.
Excellent.
The David Weber episode.
Excellent,
with
David.
the Chris Weave Lost Chapter.
All right, David. So send us an email with your address. I will respond with a picture from the prize tub. You pick a game, we send it to you. It's just that simple. So thank you.
I think everybody should win, Russ. How big's the prize tub?
It's not quite that big. We got to save some prizes for other events. So
sometimes that tub gets pretty full.
It does. But what we do,
it used to. But now we bring the actual tub with us to Gen Con.
And distribute it. So
just think, Russ, if you give it all away now, you won't have to lug it.
No, but we like to have a lot of prizes at Gen Con. Actually, we give it away at multiple venues. So we do all the conventions we go to.
All right.
So yeah,
I tried, folks.
But we have some good stuff in there, Dave. So thank you for that submission. Now, before we sign off for the day, are there any other memories any of you guys want to share?
Yeah, I have some handful, but I feel like I've been hogging them all. Craig, do you have any?
Well, I mean, most of mine have come. David Weber was incredible.
Yep.
I think the video conference that we had with David Weber and the entire production team at Evergreen Studios is always going to kind of like rise above a lot of the other parts of my life, I think, with Russ and I sort of head to head, because we had to fit both of our heads, one of them relatively average sized and then one of them slightly larger, into the field of a single webcam
right.
so that we could be seen on this enormous screen in this huge Hollywood conference room where they were using state-of-the-art conferencing software. And we were like, okay, this is us. And you could kind of see, in the window in the corner, we could see what they were seeing, except that they were seeing on a giant wall screen. And then there's us like, okay, guys, oh no, we're very excited here in New Hampshire. And meanwhile, the palm trees are rustling in the background and production assistants are running around with glass beakers of water. And so that was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
How about you,
was
Russ?
Amazing. Well, there's, of course, a bunch of opportunities that are amazing, like being able to sit down and chat with Matt Wilson year after year and how accessible he's made himself. He's another big
one of my favorites
hero
too.
of mine. I love War Machine and Hordes, obviously. Those kinds of moments and some really funny moments. No one mentioned one of my favorite moments of all time that is up there with the poll, which, of course, is the Stephen Hawking event, which I think we mentioned in the third chair segment. We did talk a little bit about there. But that when Jeff Engelstein ran that, helped us run that play-by-mob at Gen Con, and when the Stephen Hawking event happened, it was one of the funniest moments of my life.
I don't remember that. What was
hilarious. It was at Gen Con. There is a video of it on YouTube. And basically, he had to he impersonated Stephen Hawking in a way that was...
okay.
It was really questionable.
Pretty questionable taste, but hilarious at the same time. He did the D6G rating system in the style of Stephen Hawking, which was awesome. So my favorite line in that was, if, for example, I'm trying to rate how hot my ride is, which is just in poor taste, really, but let's be honest. Anyway, so that was one of my favorite moments. And then also just in general, meeting so many people. Angelo was fantastic, and there's you can't even name them all. So many folks that have helped really shape the show to be what it is, and all the listeners who have really helped inspire us, and let us know how much they enjoy it. It just keeps it going. And I think that's my favorite parts of getting those emails that get us charged up to do one more show, Yeah. And so if you had told me back in 2008 that we were going to be doing 200 episodes at roughly 3 to 4 hours a shot, I would have said, well, that's just insane. And no.
If you had sold this, if the two of you had sold this to me with an actual foreknowledge of what it was going to end up taking, I probably would have been like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to, good luck, you guys.
But
that's why the third chair is so comfy, Craig.
But now if you told me, but if you told me now that 5 years from now I wouldn't be doing this show, I couldn't imagine that anymore. It's a very interesting, it's one of those things. It's like having kids. If someone explained to you just how much work having kids is, no one would do it for real. But they don't tell you that because they know A, you won't believe them, and B, it's rewarding even though it's so much freaking work. So it's one of those things like when you start your own small business, we were talking about this off the air, running a small business is extremely hard, and if anybody really knew how much work it took, nobody would do it. But
nobody would do it. Keep your day job.
People are successful because they don't know. They're ignorant of how hard it's going to be, so they do it anyway, and then they just persevere and they succeed, and that's really pretty much the story of the show. We had no idea what we were getting into. We had no idea how hard it was going to be. We had no idea how many late nights and all kinds of crazy was going to happen. And yet, here it is, and it feels like a lot of work, but it also feels amazingly rewarding to have done it. And so it all comes down to the listeners. Ultimately, it does. It really. If the listeners weren't there, we wouldn't be doing it. If the listeners weren't there, nobody in the gaming world would care what we thought. Right. I mean, they only care about us. We're not like some
weird geniuses up in the backwoods of New Hampshire that everybody wants to talk to. They don't want to talk to us. They want to talk to all of you guys.
That was my first freak out moment of the show, by the way, guys. I don't know if in the early days of the show, we would review games, right?
Yes.
And we would get emails that would say things like, you just reviewed Battlestar Galactica and it's now sold out at the War Store and on Amazon. We're like, what? I mean, that's just a coincidence, right? And then but then we would do that, and it would consistently happen. Like the War Store, they'd be, can you just let us know when you're going to do one of these things? And we're like, well, we don't really know. We don't plan. The planning we do for the show is remarkably light. And so, but we get things like we would review Malifaux, and then all of a sudden you couldn't find Malifaux books for like a month, and it was like, really? Does that really happen? And I didn't believe it at first. I was like, that's just coincidence. It's the hotness.
It's the hotness. We're just talking about what's already hot.
But there were trends, and that was when it started to shift, and companies started actively, like sponsors would be like, holy crap, we are on your show, and we actually see the results. We actually see, people are buying Army Builder when you talk about it on the show, and we
start to get review copies.
Right. I mean, we start to get review copies, and then we started to figure out, well, what are we going to do about this? We can't review every single game we get sent. Are we really going to do that? Are we just going to review a game to review it? Or are we only going to review games we like? And so a lot of those decisions get made, but it was really, that was the first moment that I realized, people actually sort of consider what we're saying and actually appreciate what we're saying and actually think we have reasonably okay opinions about these games. And that was sort of
interestingly enough goes completely counter to what I was trying to say.
Yes,
which is that it was really it's important about the listeners. But you run with this one.
No,
that's what Russ is saying.
I am saying that.
No, he's not. He's saying we're geniuses.
No, I'm saying that
I can't argue with that.
I'm saying the listeners were
because of the listener base.
I know. Now it's 2-on-1 is it?
That's Craig being negative again.
Well, you know what? I'm running into the cave where Rafe can't find me. So now it's going to be 1-on-1. The mouth of that cave is narrow. Only Russ can get through, and if I'm lucky, he can't get his head through.
I remember that feeling too, Russ, and I lived it again that first con when I got theoretical 25 doors slammed in Craig and R's faces. There's no doors because it was booths, and then the next year when they're like, oh, wait, you guys have a podcast? Yeah. Oh yeah. Come over here. I want to talk to you. That's when I felt what you're talking about.
But sorry, Craig, we cut you off.
I think we've missed something though in all this retrospective.
Yes.
And we're about to shut it down. And what we haven't talked about really, which I think is kind of like, a fish not talking about water because you just kind of forget about it, is the whole no hate philosophy.
Yeah, I thought about that today, actually.
Which I think has really served us well. When you look at a lot of the podcasting, the communities that kind of devolve into just like nasty, insular, little backstabby groups or whatever, and you've got like podcasts that just implode because the people fight and whatnot. And I mean, there's some real weird drama going on. I mean, not currently, but, that has gone on with podcasts that we've never done. Like, we've talked to people who run podcasts. They're like, oh, how do you deal with the forums? How do you deal with like the people who just like constantly demanding? And one, I think we just have a higher class of listener. Mm-hmm. But two, the no hate philosophy that we try. I mean, sometimes we slip. Usually it's me. But where we try to be positive. We, like Russ just said, we focus on the stuff that we like. We don't review stuff that we don't like. And that sort of aura or atmosphere kind of carries through in when we get out there talking to listeners and whatnot. I think that's like central.
Being parent friendly too, so that you can listen to it with a kid in the car.
PG-13 was always part of it. And then, but you're also right, Craig, and you mentioned, I think in Rapid Fire, or Geekly did, that he was mentioning all the segments, and you mentioned Hypertripe. And I like the idea of Hypertripe because I just like the name. And the idea was we talk about some new hotness games that are coming out, and we would talk about them as either being they're really worth hyping, or they're tripe, they're the bad meat, whatever, and you wouldn't like them. And I remember when we did that segment happened once. And the reason it only happened once was exactly because of the no hate policy. We got a lot of emails saying you guys have left your no hate, and you're bashing games. And the intent wasn't to bash them. The intent was kind of to say these games we don't think are going to live. But it did come across. It was
equal the hype.
Yeah. And so And I recognized that as soon as we did it, after it went out, I didn't even think about it when we were doing it because I didn't think we were bashing it. But of course, all these games have fans.
Well, I mean, how many hundreds of hours have we? You're not gonna hit them all out of the park.
No, but we realized we immediately didn't do it anymore because we realized it was veering from one of our tenets of the show, which is we really don't. I mean, here's one of the. It's not a secret because we say it all the time, but we will not review a game on the show we don't like. The only time that's ever happened is if we have a disagreement about a game we like, Agricola, and so one of us really feels passionately about it.
Oh, now I want to play it.
We have fun little side. We did a weird segment on Agricola that was kind of funny. Raef and I did, but so that's a way around that problem. But that's the only time we really do a game where we would never do a game that all three of us stinks. There was a couple that was like a cage match where one of the games I think Are You a Traitor we didn't really love, so we kind of put it in there with Werewolf and kind of said it's no contest, play Werewolf.
Right.
But basically that's I think you're right, Craig. That policy has really served us very, very well. And I think it's one of the secrets of the show's success also.
Right.
And it's a conscious decision, and it's always a challenge.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think I usually fail when I'm talking. I obviously failed with David Weber.
Yes.
And there's been a few other times, but I mean, with that as your sort of guiding star, even when you veer off it, you can get back on course. I think that sort of outlines the discussion, if you will. Right. Sort of frames the whole thing.
Yeah. I think too, for me, having periodic episodes just from episode 93, I think have the benefit of being a little bit more nostalgic because you two are still living the show.
Right.
You guys are still committing 4 to 6 hours a week or every other week to the show, not including the games that you guys need to review. And that was one of the reasons I've learned. It's kind of like with me playing guitar. There came a time when Russ would be like, "Hey, we got to review a game," and I'm like, I don't want to. It was a perfectly fine game. There's nothing wrong with that. I was like, no, he's telling me to review a game. I want to focus on the new dangly in front of me, D&D 5e. And so you guys still do that. So I have the benefit, I think, from nostalgia, and it's really, I have really such fondness thinking about it and the different things that the three of us did and the listeners we got to meet. And especially, I can't end the show 200 without mentioning my good friend Doc and my good friend and best friend and one of my best friends and colleagues. And it's so funny how we met him. It was really early in the show. He was just a listener. He walks up to me, introduces himself to me, and I, ironically, more history of the show, I'm the one that gave him his nickname of Doc without even knowing it. So his name is Daniel O. Crane, but his email address, all read together, I thought was Doc Rain, like a gamer handle, and Rain being from 40K because I knew he played fantasy. So I walk up and I'm like, "Hey, Doc," and his friends are standing around being like, "Who's this joker? Why is they calling my friend Doc? Who is this guy?" And they didn't really know us yet, and so it's been a real pleasure, I think, to meet people at cons and get to know them as friends and to see them each year. And I've gotten to know Doc and his gamer friends, a lot of his crew, and they've become real life friends. And then Angelo has been so, beneficial to the show. He was such a fan of the show, and he donated his La Quintas, and it's quite special when I look back at it through the eyes of nostalgia. Oh, and then my two biggies of meeting people are Matt Wilson, of course, like Russ said, and Dan Abnett. Remember that, Craig?
Oh, yes.
We got to meet Dan Abnett.
We did get to have dinner
with him.
Yeah. We had dinner with Dan Abnett.
We had dinner. And he was so cool and so gracious.
Yeah.
And
that was Vince again.
Yep. And of course, there's too many names to name, and I want to name them, but then I hesitate to because I'll leave somebody out and be like, I can't believe you didn't name me.
That's why I was going to try not to.
There's too many names. All the other podcasts, all the other gamers.
Yeah, all the other podcasts.
There's so many people that helped us along the way, but also just joined in and became close friends. And one of the reasons I look forward to cons now is just resyncing with those folks. So yeah, of course, the number one thing is just meeting the people, but there's so many to name. But yeah, there's so much. It's so much to be thankful for. So thank you so where you were going, Craig, was the right place, which is thank you, our listeners, because without you guys, we would not have done 200 episodes.
None of this happens.
And none of this would happen.
Right.
And
that's true.
It's you guys actually, caring about what we have to say, which still defies. I still don't really, pretend to understand why we are fun to listen to, but I love the fact that you appreciate what we try to do here, and so we'll continue to try to do it. It's basically the plan.
I'm still half convinced this is all just a sham, and Russ is faking all of this just to make me keep doing it.
There's really just 3 guys in Albuquerque that listen, and that's it.
That's right. That's right. And like all you guys, Bob, all of you guys,
it's just me
Adam,
doing voices.
The Adamses. You're all like paid actors.
Yeah, Spooky and Phil. It's just me doing voices.
Yep. I've met Phil.
You've met Phil.
McPeak, sir, and you are no Phil.
All right, fair. All right. Well, thank you everyone for 200 awesome episodes, and we're looking forward to making many, many more.
At least one more.
I wonder how many hours that is.
It's like
I was
roughly
going
4.
I was going to calculate that for the rapid fire, and
it's too hard.
Calculating all of the third chairs took so long. I didn't have any extra time.
It's somewhere between 600 and 800 because they're not all 4 hours, but they're not all 3 hours, but they're almost all over 3 hours. So you can do the math there. So, Raef, thank you so much for joining us on this very special
thanks
episode.
for having me, as always.
Oh, it's always a blast, and it's always it's like going home.
It is like going home. So, Raef, if people want to find out what you're up to on the internets, where should they go?
You know what? That's a great question, Russ. Right now, I would say the best place is still Twitter. I'm at the D6G Hollywood on Twitter. I read Twitter a lot more than I post these days. I just don't post anything. I don't have something to say. So that'd be the great place, send a message out that way. And I do pop into the D6G, my email on the D6 Generation, maybe once a month, just to see if anybody out there is. Because sometimes I do get random questions, and Russ is usually pretty good to be like, hey, somebody's got a question about, Agricola or something like that. So those 2 places, I would say.
Very cool.
Or, I mean, if you want to do through work channels, you can do that too. My website's easy to remember. It's raefgranger.com. So if you want to connect through work email, that works too.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Raef. We hope to catch you again. Are you going to be able to join us for the big predictions episode here coming the end of the year?
Yeah, that's coming up. And
awesome.
I don't know. Will I see you guys at Extra Life?
Well, I don't know. This year's crazy. We're gonna. I'm glad you brought that up, though. We are going to have to abstain from Extra Life this year due to a bunch of crazy commitments. However, we are going to do double duty next year to make up for it because we feel really, really bad.
Start early.
So we're going to start super early.
You're going to start a weekend early.
Yeah. But this year we'd take a break. But next year we'll be back with more craziness on that front. So Raef, good on you for being involved and be sure to tweet out your Extra Life link so everybody can go and help out there.
Well, I know in the past years I've been, quote, lazy. I attend Extra Life and feel like I'm supporting that way, but I usually just figure, I'm not going to create a separate page because you guys do, so no need to pull from that. But maybe since I am going, maybe I'll create something that way, or maybe connect it over with Dave and those guys and just throw out the love, the donations that way.
There you go. Good stuff.
Well,
all right, Raef. So we'll see you again near the end of the year for predictions.
Sounds good. Catch you guys later.
Take care.
See you later, Raef. Bye-bye. This edition of Did You Ever Notice is brought to you by our patrons from Patreon. By going to patreon.com, probably suffering through that horrible video, and then pledging to 50 cents, $2 or more an episode, they help keep the lights on for the show and keep Russ and I and all the gang moving forward. So today I'd like to thank Douglas, Duncan Allen, Dylan Bright, Edward Boardman, and Edward Doherty. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank all of you for your support and your help in the show. Did you ever notice how many people it takes to do even the simplest tasks when you think about it? When we were reflecting on what we needed to cover, what we wanted to cover for episode 200, I wanted to make sure that we were including all the people that helped build the show, and of course that ultimately means the listeners. It meant having Raef with us. It meant the third chairs, as many of them as we could in that last moment. And it really, when I got to thinking about it, and I knew we were going to forget a whole bunch of people when we started talking about names and we started talking about interviews, and I don't even think we mentioned Kurt Covert, Alicio Cavatore. It just the list goes on and on and on. And if we left anyone out, please don't feel bad. In fact, if you email me, I'll make sure I mention you next time, because we owe all of this, or whatever this is, to all of you. And without your help, we never would have been able to pull it off. But another weird thing that kind of popped into my head, with all of the businesses that have stepped up over the years and kind of made a wager on the D6 generation and sort of put their money behind their opinion that maybe this show was worth something, or at least getting out to you guys, the listeners, was worth something. And so I started to think, well, I mean, we've got the War Store, and we've got Battle Foam, and we've got Geek Nation Tours, of course, who've been with us for a really long time. And then I started to think, who else did we have? And I tried to list them, and I couldn't. There were so many of them. So I decided to go through our entire catalog and try to figure out, like, what did happen with all these businesses that came and to support us. And, of course, some of the businesses came and went. Some of the businesses came and stuck with us for the entire thing. It's a very interesting mix when I started looking at it. And I wanted to, kind of run down that with you guys, just because it really didn't fit with my memory. A lot of things that I thought I knew or I thought I remembered were wrong. And so I thought that was very intriguing. So when I started looking, I noticed that the first ever advertiser we had, anybody know? Was Navin at Painted Figs. Episode 10 was our first ever episode that had a sponsor. And so Navin stepped up and he joined us right there. Then Terranscapes came soon after that, and then Doghouse System. Terranscapes, of course, made Cool Terrain. Doghouse Systems, I think, was gaming rigs. I think that was mostly Russ and Raef as I went through it. TabletopBattlefield.com, I don't remember. I think it was a tracking website. I really should have looked it up before. Wait a minute here, just 1 second. Yeah, they're not there anymore. So I think they did like a tracking website. And then episode 23, Battle Foam joined us, which makes them the longest. It's a tie. That's right. Battle Foam and Myriad Games both joined us on episode 23. Oh, but it's not a tie, because Myriad Games kind of disinvested. I don't know. I mean, we're still, we've still got a good relationship with them and all, but they put their advertising money elsewhere with their focus. So Battle Foam, yeah, episode 23. And of course, Myriad Games, when it showed up at episode 23, it was not just Myriad Games. It was Myriad Games on behalf of friendly professional gaming stores everywhere. Rogue Market was there for a little while. And then Wolf Lair, makers of fine gaming programs, joined us in episode 34. So this was relatively early in this process. We had a lot of these businesses that stuck with us for a long time. We had a little string of Dan the singer from Westchester, New York. You still with us, Dan? He was advertising, looking for gamers, trying to get a gaming group together in Westchester, New York. And then episode 51, the War Store, joined us. So there you've got some of the big ones. Only waiting for one more big one. Episode 80, War Gamma, joined us for a little while. They do cool resin terrain. They're still around. And then 81, we do these ganging things every now and then where multiple guys join us at once. Geek Nation Tours, Terrace, joined us in 81, episode 81. And War Games, Soldiers, and Strategy joined us in episode 81 too. And a lot of these guys were with us for years. That's 9 years of stuff really kind of flies by, and it was creepy looking at all this stuff. Armorcast, absolutely famous terrain company that's been around forever. Episode 112, they joined us for a while. Conquistador Games joined us for they were with us for a couple years, and then those guys all formed a new company. They're still going strong. Conquistador Games is now, I can't remember the name, and I can't stop it again. Winged Hussar Publishing, my own beloved publishing company, joined us for a while. That was awesome. And Cool Mini or Not, I had totally forgotten that Cool Mini or Not advertised with us. They jumped in on episode 123. They were with us for a while. Miniature Market joined us for a while. They joined us on episode 129. Episode 132, Urban Lasercraft, our local friend Will, who had a laser cutting business that actually got quite successful to the point where it was boring for him because he was spending too much time doing it, and so he got rid of his laser. But yeah, so, and of course, a lot of these guys, things sort of settled down at one point in episode 96. Game Salute joined the Myriad Game family, and that became a split split ad. And of course, Battle Foam did. For the last couple of years has sort of split between that and Wild West Exodus. So really, we couldn't have done this without you guys. And then it's all about the patrons. It's all about... No, I'm not going to do that to you. But the patrons and Patreon, and really where things have kind of come about now and really made this enough of a going concern that Russ and I continue doing it. And that was just awesome. And then on top of that, of course, there are the businesses that haven't been advertisers that have just been really crazy supportive of us all along. Smirk and Dagger Games, Stronghold Games, and Games and Gears. Sam and the whole crew over at Games and Gears, who really saved our bacon at Gen Con this year, and of course did the big D6G brushes for last Christmas, which were very successful. And so all of these friends in the industry really is what it comes down to. That is just yet another thing that's really come about and sort of snowballed with the D6 generation. So I just wanted to kind of spend Did You Ever Notice? Because that's kind of where I had a lot of this stuff already researched for a question in Rapid Fire, and then decided to go with the other stuff that I did. But it got me thinking, and I was looking at all the different things that all the people we talk, going through all these episodes. It was crazy. I remember talking about how we choose factions and watching Warhammer 40,000 go from 4th edition to wherever it is now. 9 years is a long time. And this just kind of was just another way to kind of track it through all these businesses who supported us through the years. And so I just wanted to send that last shout out to them, but to end shouting out to you guys, the listeners who made this all happen, because none of this would have happened for us if you guys hadn't found something worth listening to in this show. I wouldn't have been able to write these books that I get to write now. None of this stuff would have happened for us. And so really a heartfelt and genuine thanks to all of you guys for listening, and especially you guys who listen to the very end. Here we are, Norbert. The music is about to happen. We're about to go out. I don't know what Russ has got planned after Did You Ever Notice here, but I'm sure it'll be funny. And I just wanted to say thanks to all of you guys who stick with us and listen all the way to the end, or just listen to Rapid Fire, or just listen to Achievements in Gaming, or whatever it is that Tom listens to, the first 5 minutes. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode. the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACADACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
All right, welcome to our maiden voyage of the McLaughlin Group, D6 Generation. We're going to ask a series of questions, cover a series of issues, and Russ Wakelin with me today and Raef Granger on assignment in Concord are going to offer responses. Issue number 1. Gavin Thorpe leaving Games Workshop. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? Gav Thorpe has a serious body of work. He's got the fluff from the Chaos Space Marine Codex that just came out under his belt. He did the Tomb King's Army book, the Last Chances novel, and one of the Dark Angels novels. Russ Deckermouse Rock the House, what do you think?
Well, Gav has been a very influential figure, but he's also been a very controversial one. There's been a lot of things swirling around him in the past. Some people love it.
That's about enough of that. Rafe, fear backwards buzzwords, what do you have to say?
Who's Gav Thorpe and what's...
Wrong! This will all end badly. He's going to end up disappearing and then resurface at Privateer Press, who will come out with an entire army of Egyptian undead scorn warjacks and will spell the beginning of the end of the domination of the war machine. Issue number 2! Bad attitudes in gaming. Recently on the nets, this has been covered. Several different people at the Privateer Press conversation groups have been complaining about bad attitudes. On Games Workshop tables, you see min-maxing, vague rules interpretations, and personality issues constantly cropping up. Privateer Press, you have the dreaded page 5. Is he going to play like he's got a pair? Like he's got a pair of what? Certainly not a pair of painted models when you look at half these kids and what they put on the table. Now, Rusty the Red 2 phone booth, what do you have to say?
Well, I think some people overstate the bad attitudes of gamers. I mean, those are the ones you remember at tournaments.
Rafiki Tiki Torture Scorcher! Enough with your laughter.
I love page 5. Page 5 is the way to play. It's the only way to play.
Wrong! All gamers are social misfits who are moving little pieces of metal and plastic over railroad tables pretending to kill other little pieces of metal and plastic. Their issues range far larger than good attitude or bad attitude. Issue number 3, 40K 5th edition is coming out this summer. They're coming out with new models, a new focus. Is this just in time or is it too late to save the big behemoth? Russ the Die Man Y-Clan!
I think it might be a matter of the wrong direction too late. I think they really need to rethink their whole direction.
Interesting, Rafe, the Evlad Mousepad!
I actually do agree with Rusty Wakelin over there. I think it's a little too late, a little too little.
Unfortunately, you're both correct. It is too late for a quick fix. Only a real change in direction is going to change this game for the better and make it more competitive. Otherwise, it will just continue to fade. Issue number 4. Gaming events. Are they going up? Are they going down? We've got Games Day. It's been developing and it's been spreading like the plague. Adepticon gets bigger and bigger with each passing year. Havoc is a local phenomenon. It goes up, it goes down. TempleCon we were recently attending as the three of us. And then there's Gen Con and its multiple international problems. Rusty Bo Busty, not crusty. What do you have to say?
I think game cons are as big as ever, although there is definitely a trend in changing the types of games. I think the kind of games we used to see are not as prominent as the ones we're seeing today.
Rafe the Strafe and Waif Lovelace, what do you have to say for yourself?
I have to say that I think...
Take a breath!
What?
How unprofessional. I said Rafe, the Strafe and Waif, Lovelace. What do you have to say for yourself?
I have to say for myself that I think with the 360 and the MMORPGs, I think that's going to make attendance at cons down for these types of tabletop games and board games. And
that sort of fits into the reality, but we have to deal with right now is that everything is cyclical. Civilizations rise and fall. Global temperatures warm and cool. John Travolta goes hot and then cold. When hoop skirts and cravats are back in style at the same time, watch for gaming conventions to hit a whole new stride. And that's all we've got today. Tune in next time when I've got more time to think of something else to say. Goodbye.
You're listening to the D6 Generation. We try not to suck. How we do it? Hello and welcome to the D6 Generation. This is our first attempt at a podcast.